All right, so we're going to get started. This is a resume workshop. So if you'd like, I'm happy to review your resume on this call today. If you want to send it in, so I'll send that to you right now to have your resume reviewed. And he will remove all of the fine information and so forth from your resume. No one is going to see your name or anything. We'll even change your employer and all sorts of stuff because we want to make it confidential. But this is a resume workshop, so I'm just going to get right into this. And I put all of your resumes that everyone sent over. Okay, and this is the first resume here. So what I'll do as I review these resumes today is I will give suggestions. And then also, as I'm doing that, I will talk to you guys about some rules of resumes and start doing that as well. There's a popular article that I've written that people should also try to take a look at. I will also give you access to some books and other things I've written about resumes. But this is just an overview of things that are a good idea to remove from your resume. And I think the things about race and religions and political affiliations and so forth are definitely things that you don't want to put on there. But let's get started. So this first resume I'm just looking at, and give me 1 second in the background. This type of, when people do these sorts of descriptions a lot of times on their resumes, and this is very common. I think this is probably a 1-column resume and just didn't format correctly when it was sent over. But these sorts of descriptions, when you write these at the top of the resume, I typically do not recommend doing these. So this person's writing their background and other information. The problem with doing this is the people that are going to hire you already understand this sort of information. So you don't need to tell them that you're highly successful. You don't need to tell them that you've done this sort of work. You don't need to tell them the number of countries and all this sorts of things. People want to make their own conclusions about your resume. And so when you put this sort of stuff on your resume, it's never a good idea to have this kind of background section. The person that does this, typically, the reason they do it is this is something that's done in a lot of other industries by resume writers. It's also done with more senior people, and it's not always a good idea to have this on your resume. And when I see this, it's almost like it's just like a tipping point where if you need to tell people what you've done, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to them. And resumes with this kind of stuff on them are very difficult for people to get hired with. Now, there's a couple other interesting things with this resume. This person's an attorney and writer, self-employed. They're talking about their longtime dream is to write a novel, and they accepted a package, which means essentially if you're a young attorney, essentially what that means is that, and this is a made-up company that we put in there, but that this person was probably asked to retire or decided to retire so right there, then and there, that's just person's basically saying that they were asked to retire probably because they weren't providing a lot of value. I don't know, but now they're writing a novel. Things like something to avoid on your resume is you want to avoid stuff that doesn't have anything to do with practicing law. And I'll tell you why that is in a second. But the big thing is this is coming from these are Harrison's rules, but this is coming from Harrison. And my whole career has been dedicated over 25 years now to getting attorneys jobs. And I only get paid by law firms if you get a job. And so I have to be laser focused when I look at a resume. I have 200 employees to support, and I do nothing but this for a living. And I look at resumes all day. So I know what works and I know what doesn't. But anytime you have anything to do with stuff about not practicing law, that talks about not practicing law, that's very risky. You can't say you want to write a novel. This makes it sound like you want to do something else. Attorneys are sitting in offices and billing lots of hours all day in law firms, and this does not help you. Now, I think this person looks very interesting, and one of my best friends is someone that left one of my old best friends was someone that left the practice of law to do this. So I think it looks great, but it's not something you want to do. You also want to avoid summaries. You need to avoid summaries. The problem with summaries is the summaries of your experience at the top of the resume. If you have a summary of your experience, the problem with that is this makes it look like you don't want to practice law. Look like you do not want to practice law. And your summaries make it look like you have so much time on your hands you have not only too much time, but it makes it look like you need to talk down to the reader as if they don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand. The other problem is what you do. The other problem with summaries is it also is almost always done by resume companies that justify their fees by making you feel good about yourself. Feel good about yourself and not necessarily making you look strong on paper, not making you employable. And these summaries tend to be written by outplacement companies that don't know how to place attorneys. Companies do not know how to place attorneys. Okay, so that's the first thing. You need to avoid summaries of your experience. Now, so this particular stuff, all this on a resume should not be there. It shouldn't be there because it's not going to get you a job. This probably shouldn't be there. You shouldn't talk about a long-time dream that's other than practicing law. And again, I think this is perfectly acceptable to have a long-time dream other than practicing law, but this doesn't make you employable. And I've now decided to resume my in-house legal practice, which essentially, and I'm not trying to be harsh to this person because there's nothing wrong with any of this, but if this person's saying, I decided to pursue my dream of penning a novel, that's great, but why aren't you doing that? And why did you leave? And it's just raising all sorts of questions. Law firms do not like law professors for the most part. And I'm going to, again, these dates are made up. This is not an actual stuff, but this can certainly go on there. I actually got a job as a law professor when I was I think a first or second year. And the law firm that I got it with, it was like, what are you doing? No one's ever done this. What are you thinking? And because it makes it look like you're not interested in practicing law. Now, I think there's some benefits to it. It can give you credibility and it can make you an expert for clients and so forth. But for the most part, people that become adjuncts and things, even at top law schools, don't always do it for a long time. There's nothing wrong with doing it, but you need to be very careful about putting stuff on your resume that makes it look like you have other priorities. That makes it look like you have other priorities. And again, I'm telling you this, like you have other priorities. I'm telling you this from the standpoint of someone whose job is to get people jobs in law firms. And no one in their right mind that has a lot of applicants is going to hire someone that looks like they want to do something else. And then this person was was head of employment and litigation law, and then was doing these in-house jobs, which is great. And then also looks like they had some really good law firm jobs. They had a law firm job and then they went back in-house and then they have all these different things and these bullet points on here as well. So this resume, there's some things that are being done right. Like I like the education area, the way this was done at the end. I think that's good. This person's obviously very smart. They're obviously, one of the things that's very strong about this resume as well is it shows a commitment to one geographic area. If you've worked only in one geographic area, that's very positive as well. And people like that. These volunteer affiliations are nice, but again, some of this stuff could detract from looking like you're interested in working in a law firm. This is also right here. This person talked about their previous experience working for these different places. This is actually for older attorneys, especially, or for people that have had too many jobs in a short period of time. Sometimes the smartest thing to do to make your resume shorter and not to have as much space would be to call this your most recent experience, and then this be previous experience, and then just talk about some of the stuff. The problem with having a long resume where you talk about all these different positions is that there is a prejudice against people in law firms that are senior, unless you're bringing business, and that's not always the case. And again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone that's trying to get a position in the law firm. But if your resume looks as if you're very senior, many times that can hurt you. If you have several jobs, if you've had a lot of jobs, and I would say if you've had more than 4 or 5 jobs, and most people have more than 4 or 5 jobs, you have had more than 4 or 5 jobs, it's often best to, sorry, keep capitalized. I'm just going to keep it lowercase here. It's often best to summarize them in one line or something. Summarize them under one caption. If you do the opposite, if you do not do this, then what happens? It can look like as if you are very senior, or are not interested in, or have had too many jobs. One of the things too that I would say that's very important about these resumes, and this one in particular, is once you remove all this stuff and you clean all this up, most people and attorneys reviewing this know what a lawyer does. So you can talk, you don't need all this descriptions and things about what you did. And some of these words like optimize 40 country workforce, this is very interesting, but most people that are reading this resume are going to be like, oh, this is the director of employment law at this huge corporation for 14 years. And that's very good. So people like that, but you don't have to have all this detail. So those are some of my comments about this resume. This is an in-house resume, so it's not as common. And you can see here, this person was a federal law clerk and did all this stuff and has very good experience. Gardner, Carden, Douglas was a well-regarded firm in Chicago. There's a lot of very good things about this. You can see here, I haven't done Grammarly or anything on this, and we'll take a break at some point and I'll install that and go through these resumes. But this particular, you need to be very careful about this. And all these bullet points and things tend to detract. It's unfortunate, but as resumes longer, people are not as impressed with them and it detracts attention. Some of these things too, like the fact that this very senior attorney was in school in Germany for a semester and then went to Honduras, people aren't going to be that interested in that. Those are some of my observations about that resume. All right, here's the next one. Let's see, a rare combination of business and the law, including over 7 years. Because again, these resumes, this one here too, and we're doing all the ones that people sent us, so it's not, but this is another one, again, that is done by it looks like it was done by a resume company or an in-house, I don't know, but some people, the same thing. So these things are not helpful. You don't need to tell any employer that you have big firm plus in-house legal experience. They already know this when all they have to do is review your resume. You don't need to tell them that you have an MBA in finance. They already know that if they review your resume. You don't tell them where you're licensed. That should just go at the bottom. And then, so you just need to be very careful. And then if you start saying you have a rare combination of business and the law, you have to let the people reviewing your resume reach those conclusions. So one of the issues with this resume, and then also with the one we looked at first, is I get the sense, and I'm probably right, that this person would come in and tell the employer what to do and always be right. They're a professor, they've got all this experience, they've done all these things, they've worked at all these big employers. And the problem with working for other people is anytime you're working for other people, regardless if you're a general counsel or whatever, or if you want to work for other people, others, you need to look manageable, and not like you're the manager. Want to be a know-it-all manager. Now, again, I'm not saying that it's wrong to be a know-it-all manager. There's plenty of jobs you can do and not being a know-it-all manager. But for the most part, most law firms, especially if you don't have business, most law firms hiring people without business want followers. If you go into a law firm and you look at the people that don't have any business that are working for there, and I'm just being completely honest here, the people that are senior, that are working in a law firm with no business, they are followers, and they will do what you want, when you want, how you want. And they won't get mad when you give them instructions. They will follow your orders, and that's just how it works. And especially for senior attorneys. And this is especially for senior attorneys, if you want to work, if you have no business. So the problem with this resume, and it's not a huge problem, but if you want to get a job with a law firm, it's going to be a problem, is all this sort of stuff is interesting to both law firms. It's interesting, but it's not going to help get a position in a lot of cases. So then you go to this person, this one right here, and this person saying that now they've started a company building housing and shipping containers, which actually sounds very interesting. And they've put together a big team, which is amazing. But the problem with this particular position is law firms do not hire entrepreneurs. Now, they hire entrepreneurs that have business that practice law, but law firms do not want to hire entrepreneurs. And again, I'm telling you this because I've witnessed this firsthand. If they see someone that looks too independent, then they're going to know if this person went and started a business, they're going to know that the person's going to want to start a business again. And not only that, why would a law firm in their right mind, why would any law firm want to hire someone that's currently working with we made up this information, but Goldman Sachs and these sorts of people? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense for any law firm to want to hire someone like this, because it doesn't look like they want to practice law. It looks like they want to start a business, and that's just a bad investment. You bring someone in and you introduce them to their clients, and then all of a sudden they want to start a business. And the other thing is that people that once you start a business, you move from a role of taking orders to giving orders, and that's a big shift. And there's nothing wrong with a lawyer telling a junior associate to do some work or something. That's giving orders, but it's just a completely different type of thing. No law firm is going to want to talk to someone that's had their own business for the past year. And then here you go into corporate counsel, which is an interesting job here, where the person has worked as mini general counsel and all this sort of stuff. So this actual experience is actually fairly interesting. And this sort of stuff that this person's done makes them very specialized in terms of this type of business, and there may be a position for them, and it may be at a smaller firm outside of a major market, or there may be something for them, but budgets, inventory, this has nothing to do with working in a law firm. So no one is going to be interested in this. Lots of people work as contract attorneys, but the problem with that is if you worked as a contract attorney for that long, for 2 years, it makes it look more, I don't even know what Walker Contract Group is, but I know it's not part of Fenwick and West. But if you work as a contract attorney, it makes it look like you may not want a permanent commitment. And even if you could get a position doing something permanent, you're better off being very careful with the titles, because if you're trying to work in a law firm and you say your last position was as a contract attorney, then this person would have to ask the law firm to bring them in as senior counsel or something, and that's probably not going to work. And if a contract attorney probably is not representing Gentech and all these people, so you have to be very careful with that. Some of the rules that I would recommend is if you have worked as a part-time or as a contract attorney, you need to be very careful. Be careful about what you call it. You can call yourself an attorney. You don't have to put down a title many times. You do not have to put a title. You can let them ask. Or you can just say attorney or something along those lines. But just using the word contract, the terms jump out at people. So you just need to be very careful about using those terms, because it doesn't connote the right message to the law firms. Now, again, people work as a contract attorney for all sorts of reasons. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's great. But why would you put that? And then this is another entrepreneurial venture here with 6 years. And you can see here, this is what happens. So if somebody goes to work doing something entrepreneurial and then they always go back and do something entrepreneurial again. So that's the risk of hiring them. It's a huge risk. And it's a risk now, I'm not saying this is entrepreneurial, this is in-house, transactional, thing. But back in this period of time, taking these positions was a kind of an entrepreneurial thing. I'm not going to get into it, but this is not even related to practicing law. Now, this is a good one here. This is a long-term commitment to a major law firm. I'd like to know what city it was in, and there's nothing there. And I'd also like to know the person's title. So you can see here, they called themselves a contract attorney here. They probably, I'm almost positive, they were an associate here, but they don't even say that. So they should say they were an associate at White & Case here, and then do that. And then they were a law clerk for a major, in Fresno, which is a very prestigious place. So this is all very good. And this is all, these are excellent experiences. This is good. So these two things right here are where the person was on a law firm path and they did it for a long time. And then they got off and went in-house. Now, I want to make, for young attorneys that are on this call, and I'm sure there's a lot of them, resume is very common, by the way, for people that go in-house. So once I just want to be very clear. In 2004, this particular candidate could have left White & Case and gone to plenty of major American law firms or smaller law firms and been a partner. And instead, they were seduced by going into a funding company, which actually back then was a pretty interesting career decision. I'm not going to get into it, but people were doing very well financially and all sorts of things. And they showed a lot of permanence when they went there as well. Typically, this is another thing than resumes, and I just want to show you how this works. If somebody works at a firm, they stayed at White & Case for 8 years, which is amazing. Even back then, it was amazing. And this is a very good attorney. So someone that was able to stay there for 8 years, obviously extremely competent and a good attorney. They got a clerkship, which is also a good thing, and the chief judge of the U.S. District Court, which is great, in California, which is very competitive. So this person was on a law firm path. And many of you young attorneys are on this path right now. You may be in a big firm, but then what happens is then people go in-house, and then they go in-house and they stayed at this place a long time, probably because they're very good. Then whatever happens, almost always people lose their jobs. They lost their job probably in 2011 because of the financial crisis. And so this company was having problems with its funding and getting paid back and all that sort of thing. Then they had to work as a contract attorney. Then they took this job where they stayed a long time. They got a very good job doing this. And now they're doing this. So typically what happens is people go in-house and then all of a sudden, there's just a lot of movement in the next few years. So once you get off the law firm path, that's typically what happens. It's not always what happens, but it's what happens. It's what happened to this person as well. So they started off, or did they start off? This person would have started off here in a law firm. So they were judicial law clerk. You can see that. And then they went to Seyfarth Shaw, and then they went to Gardner and Douglas after being counsel there. So they probably started at this firm, did well, and then all of a sudden here they are in-house doing all these different in-house jobs. And the in-house jobs always last a short period of time. This is just how it works at most firms. Like people just bounce around, and this is a very common in-house resume. And that's the problem many times with going in-house. If you go to a law firm and you get a book of business, then you tend to have many times a lot more employment stability. So it's just interesting for me whenever I review these resumes, because you can see a lot of that. Now, all this writing and attention here is interesting, but this level of detail, most law firms that are reviewing this wouldn't need as well, all these bullets and things. This person to say they were developed online privacy policies and helped with these different things, that would be fine. But you don't really need a lot more than that. And I want to make this point real quickly, that once resumes, and all these resumes have this issue, and this is a very important thing, and this is for law firms. So I'm giving you this information for law firms, but also a lot of companies. Law firms, when a law firm reviews a resume, law firms hire specialists and not generalists. Now, there are some law firms in small markets and so forth but they're usually the places you may want to work. So that means litigation of a certain type, or it means they want a certain type of transactional work and so forth. Type of transactional work and more. Transactional work meaning real estate leasing, something along those lines. The reason they want that is because law firms want law firms want specialists because that's what their clients are paying for. They're not paying for someone that has experience reviewing customer communications, doing privacy policies, then doing real estate transactions and tax. That's not what they're paying for. And then licensing, that was just license, technology transfer, NDAs, master service. There's just too much going on here. You have to understand that anytime anybody that's doing this, and these are very common mistakes. Most attorneys believe that if they put that they've done all these different things on their resume, law firms are going to be impressed, but they're not. What happens is clients go to a law firm and they say, I need a license agreement. And they say, great, we have a license attorney. They say, I need a patent. And they say, great, we have a patent attorney. They say, my company's been sued for breaching an agreement. And they say, great, we have commercial litigators. Law firms hire specialists. They say, I've been injured in an accident. Then they say, I'm sorry, we don't do that, but we know a great personal injury lawyer at another firm. Like, they hire specialists. So if you start muddling up your resume and it starts looking like you're a generalist, not a specialist, that's going to hurt you. So I look at resumes all day, every day. And most of the time I'm like, great, this person does this, they do that. And but as the person gets more senior, a lot of times they start doing a lot of different things. And once you start doing different things, it's just important to understand you're muddying up your resume and you're making yourself less employable. Now, that's not necessarily true for all types of in-house jobs. So some types of in-house jobs want people that can work on a bunch of different things and understand a bunch of different things. But you can't have too much going on. If you have too much going on, it just doesn't help you. And so you need to be very careful about that. Now, this person's also making a mistake here. And the mistake is, and this is interesting too, by the way. So look at this. The person was at this particular employer this is very common. The person was at this particular employer for 8 years or 9 years, it looks like. Then they were at this employer, you can see, for 8 years. And then they were at this employer for 6 years. So most people, and these are very good numbers. Most people, and especially a lot of younger people, and it's been this way for forever, but people will move around a lot. And so if I saw this person had been at this firm or this particular job for 9 years before they went to White and Case, I would say this is a good risk because they're probably not going to move around. And then if I saw they were at this firm then I saw that if I was Law Finance Group, I would think they were a good risk as well. These are questions, and I'll just kind of go here, and I want to make sure that everyone's aware of them. The questions law firms ask when reviewing your resume. Sorry, your resume. And everyone's familiar with them, but it's, can you do the job? Do the job. And not everyone's familiar with them, but I talk about these in most of our webinars. Can you be managed? Will you commit and do the job long term? Long term. Do you want the job? Do we like you? And there's some more. Do we like you? And can you do that? We're married, can you do that? I want the job. Okay, so can you be managed and will you commit and do the job long term? That's a big question that people are asking. And so you can see here, like when you see numbers like this, like if somebody's interviewing this person for a lateral position, they're a good risk. If this person had 5 or 6 jobs before that, they're a bad risk, because what happens is people are habitual. If they go to one position and they stay there for a couple of years, their probably next position is going to be like that. So again, I'm a recruiter and I do make my living, a part of it at least, by people leaving firms and jobs. But I do recommend, I personally, when I'm trying to hire people, I hire people that I believe are going to stick around and commit. And that's very important. And also people that are able to be managed. This person, anybody, and the problem is when people start putting their ego and say they're highly successful and all this stuff, and they've worked at these huge firms and done all this big stuff, that makes it look like they're not manageable. And there's nothing wrong with not being manageable if you have a huge book of business and you're bringing in all this stuff. And if you say you have a rare combination of business and the law and all this, that's true. This person does have that, but you want people to reach a conclusion. And if you're telling people that conclusion on your own, that's not a good thing. So you just need to be very careful. All this stuff, the problem with this business experience right here is that I wouldn't put this on there. law firms hire, and again, this is just how it works. It works like this in every industry. Law firms, there's a preference towards hiring younger people. So the older you are, the more prejudiced you are. The reason the law firms are prejudiced against that is because they have clients and they want people that are going to work hard and be trainable and all that sort of stuff. And the older you are and the more experience you have, the more that's going many times to hurt you. So right now, if this person just goes with this resume, it looks like they're in their early 50s instead of what they really are, which is in the early 60s, which is retirement age in a lot of places. Some law firms and a lot of big ones have mandatory retirement ages, and that age could be 60 or 65. And then a lot of this stuff right here should start coming off. This person's even older than I thought. But anyway, so this stuff right here comes off. You don't need to put all these years and things. You just need to be very careful. So all you're doing, no one cares there. But when you get more senior, a lot of this experience really isn't that important. Sometimes you want to be careful. This is just a little word of advice for people. Different law reviews have different entrance requirements. Some law reviews, if you write an article that gets published by the law review, you get admitted to the law review. Other law reviews, and most of them are grades-based, and it depends on the school and all sorts of things. But what I would say, and no one cares if you're a law clerk one summer, and the license to practice law doesn't belong there. But if you're on law review and you publish, then people are going to assume that maybe your grades weren't that. These are little things that people look at and they understand when they review as many resumes as I do, but you just need to be cognizant of all that. But I would be very careful, especially for senior attorneys. Just realize that in all industries, the law included, there's a preference for younger, more trainable people. So experience is not always a benefit, and unless you have business. Now, I want to be very clear. I have placed people in major U.S. law firms, like AmLaw 100 law firms, that are in their late 70s and early 80s. Even I couldn't believe it. But they had big books of business, 3 million, 5 million, 7 million. And so there's a prejudice against law firms. There's a prejudice if you don't have business. If you have business, if you have business, people don't care. Most law firms, not all, do not care. So I want to be very clear about that. And it's really the same thing. It's just that, but this person's resume is saying that they probably don't have business is the problem. That's that. So let me move on here. Okay, so this is an interesting resume as well. So this person, what's going on here? Okay, Master of Science in Legal Studies. Okay, honestly, anything like this. Master of Science. I'm assuming maybe it's a JD. I don't know. Okay. All right. This is a younger resume, and which I'm glad we're looking at. And so we're getting there. Okay. This is actually very interesting. So let's talk about what's going on here. So first of all, Master of Science in Legal Studies. Okay, good. I'm glad we're looking at this very interesting resume. Okay, so let's talk about this resume. In law firms, there's a definite bias against academics, and that bias extends to even Yale Law School. Like Yale Law School has a reputation of turning out academics. Certain schools don't. Where I went, Virginia, no. That means there's certainly very smart people that graduate from there, but no academics. No academics is an overstatement, but it's not an academic. It doesn't have the reputation of turning out academics. Certain schools, Chicago does, obviously Yale does, but academics are just a certain kind of breed. And academics are people, again, this isn't criticism, but it's a different type. It's a study, it's an interest in ideas and that sort of thing. So this person, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, is definitely an academic. Now, I don't know why it's a Master of Legal Science or whatever in legal studies. I'm assuming this person's trying to be an attorney. So I'm just going to go with that. And I've never heard of the Quantic School of Business and Technology, which actually sounds very interesting. I'm probably going to look it up after this. And then the School of International Public Administration, there should be a year after that. And then Bates College, where they majored in rhetoric and concentrated in rhetorical criticism, and then did all these studies abroad. So I'm assuming, I don't like all the studies abroad stuff a lot of times, and you're welcome to put that in your resume if you want, and a lot of people do, as a discussion point, but you need to be very careful. I want to put here, just do not make your resume look overly academic. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is once you start doing that, it makes it look like you're not going to be able to do the job long term. It makes it look like you're not going to want the job. And it makes it look like you're not going to be managed and all those sorts of things. And then you're also not going to be the sorts of people that the law firm identifies with. Working in a law firm, again, is about basically buckling down and taking instructions for several years and then just taking what they do seriously. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's about doing research, but you have to get interested in it. Now, I don't know what rhetoric is. I probably should be smarter. I know what the word means, but I don't think you need to get into the concentration of rhetorical criticism versus rhetoric. This is just there's nothing wrong with this, but it's almost going to be arrogant, because I would ask someone, what's the difference between rhetoric and rhetorical criticism in an interview, and then the person would talk about it and do all that thing, and then I would feel like this person's not going to stick with it. And then the other thing here is this did executive master of public administration. And this means executive, I think, means that the person did it online or something, or maybe it's I don't know what it is, or maybe it's just a master. But when you start having this stuff, it makes it look like this person's not interested in practicing law. And it makes, because every degree they've gotten is something else than practicing law. And so that's scary, because it makes it look like the person isn't going to do the job long term. Now, if I just saw this, and now again, I don't know why this is a resume we have here for reviewing attorney resumes today, but it's okay. I would be more likely to be interested in the person. Now it's 2023, but okay. So let's go in here. Fabio Krishna Ames. Okay. All academic related stuff, not legal related. A job that this short, a consultant, that's not probably a real job. I would be very careful. Substitute teacher for 3 months is probably not a real job. This job is a real job, that's fine. And then all these other things. So this isn't a good example of an attorney resume. The languages are fine. The hobbies are fine. The skills here, you don't need to tell people if you do all these things, especially for a legal job. And so that's that. But the big thing is, I would recommend, in this resume, again, I don't know what this is. I think it's someone I don't know if they're trying to be an attorney or what's going on, but you just need to be very careful about stuff. Law firms want to hire people that can do the work, and not necessarily academics. And there's nothing wrong with being an academic. Obviously, an academic law schools couldn't function without academics. And there are certain people that are academics and that's what they are. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But you just need to be very careful. Anytime you put stuff on your resume that looks like it's something that you don't want to do, that makes it look like you're interested in something else, law firms are going to run for the hills. And so you just need to be very careful with that. Okay, let's see. Hopefully this is a resume for an attorney. All right, bar status. Passed the California July exam. Admission pending. Okay, let's see. Admission pending. Applied for admission based on transferred UBE scores. South Carolina bar. Okay, so that's fine. But one thing here, if this person's applying for jobs in North Carolina, the last thing in the world you want to do on your bar is put that you've applied to the South Carolina bar, because that will obviously show you can't commit and do the job long term. The other rule is you need to be very careful about listing other bar admissions on your resume if you are applying to work in another area. And people do this all the time. So they'll put down, I did really well on my test, therefore my UBEs, and therefore I'm applying to that. But the problem is if this person was applying for jobs in North Carolina, it's not good. So the bar status, by the way, should go not right at the top. It would go at the back. So you would put it, wow, this is a long resume. This next one actually looks interesting too. I'm excited about that. You would put it down here. Allow law firms to assume that you're going to, that's what you want to do. And I don't, where's this person's education? Let me see here. Is this the same resume? Sure, give me 1 second here. Oh, I see the education is at the bottom. Okay. Okay. Education at the bottom. Okay. So we'll talk about this. Okay. Okay. So this resume is a 2016 graduate. And again, this is a very common type of resume. So I'm glad that I'm reviewing and can help this person. The first thing is this rule about putting your education at the bottom is actually good. Rule is if you have more than 5 years of experience, put your bar graduation or put your law school information at the end of your resume. It's because your education is really most relevant the first 5 years, and then after that, and I'll put all these rules in the chat or something, I can make sure everyone sees them by the end. But okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So these are all the activities the person did. In most cases, especially if you've been out of law school for 5 or 6 years, I don't know that you need to put all of these, any of these activities or certifications on your resume. Now, I do recommend if you have done something extraordinary, let's see, which would be graduating cum laude and you're on law review, and this obviously doesn't belong there. That's fine. If you did something like this person, I think graduating the top 6% of their class, that's great. But after you've been out of law school for 5 years, even though this stuff was very interesting and you may have spent a lot of time doing it, I don't really recommend putting down that you're part of the Student Bar Association or really any of this stuff. I don't know how much value it is. Now, sometimes people do want to have a way to identify themselves from different points of view, and that's an individual choice. But for the most part, the problem with stuff like this is then people say, does this person want to be a criminal law attorney? Does this person want to be a real estate attorney? What's going on there? And does this person want to do tax law? So these are a lot of activities. And this is obviously a very interesting person that has a lot of interest and so forth. But you have to be very careful with this. I personally would recommend taking all this off. I think you only need to list the things you did if there's something really special about it. And again, these certifications may be very a big deal to you and other people, but I would be just very careful about that, because it's not drawing people away from what you do. And you have to be very careful. People, when they're looking at your resume, remember they're asking, do you want the job? Will you commit to the job and do the job long term? Can you be managed? All these sorts of things. And if you put all this stuff on there, it's just drawing your attention away. Now, we're going to get into a lot of detail when we start talking about the resume in a minute, but that stuff probably should come off. And then I don't recommend this format for talking about your major this way. You can just put it that way. And then all these skills, everyone does this. Realizing, knowing how to operate Outlook maybe is a skill, because I certainly don't understand how to do it yet, and I've been doing it for a long time. But all these things probably should come off. There are now relativity and all these things. If you're applying for document review or e-discovery, things might be helpful, but you definitely don't want to do that. So on your resume, so these are more rules. Do not list law school and college activities unless they make you look extraordinary, which would be things like law review, top grades, or graduating top of the class. not an individual grade in a subject, which people do. Subject, math, and so forth. And do not list your skills unless they're extraordinary. Attorneys are expected to know how to use Lexis. Use Lexis and other research services and email, etc. And then let's go back here. And then the other thing is you don't want to say references are available on request. That's just for people. References are available. Do not tell people. The reason you don't do that is because let people ask if they want them, but it's not knows that they can ask you for references if they want to. So you have to be very careful about just putting references are available on request. That's not something that people are interested in. And give me 1 second here. Okay, so let's talk about what this person has done after law school, because it is interesting. And I actually have a lot of respect for this person because they're trying very hard. So the first thing is, so this person, it looks like, graduated from law school in 2016. And in between January of 2006 and 2011, they worked in a carpet store, which is great. This person probably got very good experience. And then not only did they have a good job, they probably paid fairly well, but they decided to go to law school, which is a very cool thing. That takes a lot of working at night. And probably at that point, they might have had a family. I don't know, but maybe, yeah, they did it while they were in college, all these great things. So this is actually very impressive. And I like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't belong there. I don't know. You might want to just put here, work full time while in college to support self or something. But this is not something that you need to have at this point in your resume. The reason is because this is a legal resume for getting a job in a law firm, and it doesn't require this information right there. And then this one, Century 21, the Moore Group, rental agent, again, same thing. You don't need it. It detracts from your employability in a law firm. Now, this is okay. If this person had graduated from law school in 2022, and this last job was a 2022, that would be okay, but no. Student intern for 1 month is not something that belongs here. You could put this, and these two things really belong under your law school experience, and you could just say, student attorney in this, but anything where you've done it for 1 month is not probably something that's going to help you. These are all things that happened in law school. And here I would do something different. I would just call myself a clerk. And so this is very careful with your titles. The problem here is, and again, you don't talk about doing at this point, you're in law school. So you do not want to talk about giving world-class customer service as a clerk and maintaining an office calendar and everything. What you do here is you just basically take all this stuff out and you just say, I was a clerk in this law firm. Because if you have a legal job as a law student of any type of legal job, do not give yourself titles and responsibilities to make it look like you're not practicing law. This is the real problem. This particular resume, this is good, but if this person just said I was a clerk and then helped a busy solo practitioner, busy personal injury solo practitioner, would be probably what I would say. Assisted busy solo practitioner. I'm going to write this in just because I think it needs to be written in. Assisted busy solo practitioner, personal injury solo practitioner, injury practitioner. With daily tasks, with huge docket, and cases, something along those lines. This sounds a lot better. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is extremely important. if this person was doing this from October, this is over a year, all they need to call themselves is a clerk. They did this while they were in law school. If they were able to say that I was a clerk for this person, law clerk actually, which is what they were, instead of a intake specialist, legal administrative clerk, and then they just basically said they were doing this for a, and again, this is very important, so I want everyone to listen. And I'm not saying you're not, but I'm just saying, all of a sudden, and without listing all this ridiculous, helping with a calendar, and all of a sudden this person is employable when they get out of law school as a attorney, as opposed to and they look like they're more employable. So regardless of what your experience is, you need to make yourself look like you're employable. So you have to make your experience, you don't want to, even though that's what the person did, it doesn't matter. They're assisting a business owner pressure with document cases. That's all they need to say. You don't need to have a lot of, because everything that this person's doing, their resume is making it look like they can't do the job. So that's the problem. If you list all this other stuff, it's going to make it look like you can't do the job. So this is very important. All these things too, by the way, do not belong on this person's resume. It makes it too long. It's just, this is one line under here. So you just put whatever this was worked for student intern, adjustment submission, all these different things, student attorney here. You just put that there. So all this stuff goes down there. And the problem is all these things are just cluttering the resume. Okay, so then the person, let's see, does a job from September to 2016 for 2 months as a legal operations clerk. Not necessary. Just, again, I'm not telling you to lie on your resume, but if you do a job for 2 months and you're 5 years out of law school, don't list it. This is just something you did for a couple months after graduating from law school. It's not necessary. Then this person became a document review specialist, contract analyst for 4 years, which is okay. So I want to be very clear that I have no problem with people coming out of school and doing e-discovery. These are great jobs, and some of them pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So there is nothing, even if they don't, there's nothing wrong with doing them. But this resume could be a very strong resume. So all the person needs to do, you take all this stuff off here, you move all this stuff off, all these things that have nothing to do with practicing law, all this stuff at the bottom, relativity, like I said earlier, is probably good. And then all of a sudden, the person becomes an e-discovery specialist. So you say here, I would just say something like, instead of saying a legal document reviewer, call yourself an e-discovery specialist. Give yourself titles that make you look strong, not weak. So document review is e-discovery specialist. You need to give yourself titles that make yourself look very strong. And this is, so do not give yourself the strongest possible titles. So everyone needs to do this. Yourself the strongest possible titles. If you're a contract attorney, call yourself an attorney title. So how do you make, and again, you don't want to give yourself ridiculous titles that sound arrogant, but you need to give yourself the strongest possible title. So this person is an e-discovery specialist, right? There's tons of jobs for that. And instead of talking about all this, you figure out, you don't just say you did this for a foreign, you figure out a way to make this, for relevance, or, all this sort of stuff. So you can make this a lot stronger. This person's the e-discovery specialist. Now they went and did this job for 3 months. Okay, so let's talk about that. So this was while they were doing this job. So this isn't good. I don't like this. Any job you've done for 2 months, not put irrelevant and short time jobs. Resume, you do not have to. Now, I'm not telling you to lie, but I'm just telling you that your resume, you don't need to tell people that you were doing a job you were an anti-long-term monitoring investigator when you had this job for 4 years and you did this job for 2 or 3 months. That was probably just a contract job or something. This completely distracts it, because I look at this resume. If I looked at this resume without all the stuff on here, I'm just telling you how I would think about it. And I saw this person went to Charlotte Law School, and then I saw that this person had been an e-discovery specialist for 4 years, which is a long time, or actually is it longer than 4 years? 4.5 years. I would like this person and I would think this person may be marketable. But if I start seeing all these short-term jobs, no, what the heck? No. Okay, financial risk investigator. Okay, that's interesting. What is this? No. Robert Half, that's a contract job. You don't need to include every job you have on your resume. And I want everyone to understand the problem with all of these jobs. I don't know. Someone's going to have to figure this out. But the problem with all these contract jobs is, and I guess you have to put on this, but I don't know what senior lead compliance is for the title, is this resume falls apart right after this. Or where? No, right here. Oh, March 22 to the present. Okay, because this person suddenly starts having all these jobs. All right, well, I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this, but the problem is you have people, if they're going to hire you, they want to know that you're going to commit, that you want the job, and can you be married, we do the job apparently right here. Yeah, and the problem going on here is that this person suddenly is someone that's having all these different jobs at one time and all these different things, and it needs to look consistent. What I would probably do here is I would probably financial risk investigator, legal due diligence, legal analyst, senior. So having 4 or 5 jobs at the same time is not going to help anyone. I'm going to move on, but what I would recommend is having this, and then after this, basically just having January 2020 to present, 2020 to present, something along those lines, and just putting e-discovery specialist or something. So the big thing here, and this is important for everyone to understand, this is about law firms. This person, by the way, if they do this, could get hired by a major law firm. And when I say major law firm, if they're an e-discovery specialist, a major law firm is only going to hire them to be an e-discovery specialist if they look like there's some consistency in their resume. And so the resume can only be consistent if all resumes have to be consistent. So your resume must be consistent. And what does consistent mean? Consistent means that that they take a look at it, they have an opening, and they see that the person has been doing the same thing and wants to do the same thing. So it cannot go in multiple directions at the same time. So anytime a resume goes in multiple directions, people are going to be turned off and leave because it just doesn't make any sense. And this is a huge point, and I just want to be very clear with everyone on the call so you understand. Anytime a resume goes in multiple directions, it's going to turn off employers. So people all the time are like, why aren't I getting jobs? Why aren't people interviewing me? What's going on? The market's horrible. No, the market's not horrible. Your resume is horrible. Like your resume needs to people need to take one look at it and think, this is a perfect person. This is all they do. But the problem is legal analysts, your titles need to be consistent. Titles need to be consistent. For the most part, your responsibilities need to be consistent. Hopefully your locations, practice settings need to be consistent if possible. Your practice settings need to be consistent. What else? Your responsibility, your types of employer, all this stuff. So a practice area, consistent practice area. So this is how, and again, this is extremely important. This is what it's all about. So whatever job you do, if you want to work in a law firm, you need to look like whatever you're doing, anytime your resume goes blank, you're not going to get hired. So the idea would be if resume needs a scent. So I like to bring up the example a lot of times that can be followed and is consistent. So one of the examples that I like to give for people like that are when I'm looking at resumes, and a lot of other things that happens is, imagine you're hiring someone to take care of your newborn child, and the person shows you a resume, and the resume says, I've been a professional boxer, I've been like an airline pilot, a mechanic, And more recently, I was worked, I don't know, installing concrete. What? Are you going to hire that person? Like, of course you're not. You'd have to be out of your mind. It's the same thing with employers. You have to look at them through the standpoint of the employer. And the employer, all the employer wants to do now, if that same resume said, I've worked in taking care of preschoolers for the past 3 or 4 years, and prior to that, I was a nurse's assistant in a children's hospital, and on the weekends, I've always been very involved in taking care of my grandchildren or my kids or other people's children. You're going to be like, hell yeah, that person's great for this job. But so if your resume goes in a bunch of different directions, though, no one's going to hire you. Again, this is extremely important. So I want everyone, because every resume we've looked at today does this. You think it's cool that you have all this different types of experience, but a law firm just wants to hire someone that can do a job in a consistent practice, and in one practice area for the most part. Now, one practice area could be all litigation. It could be litigation and defense. It could be personal injury and defense, but it has to look like you want to do one thing, because if you want to do a bunch of different things, you wouldn't hire the person. Just think about it. Like if you needed I don't know, if you were going to go hire a doctor because you needed brain surgery, would you go and talk to someone that's done 15 different types of specialties over the past 10 years? Like they've been orthopedics, and then when they didn't like doing orthopedics, then they decided they were going to also work as a blood doctor, and then they did this and this, and you'd be like, hell no, there's no way I'm going to hire someone that does all these different things. Law firms are the same way. Who's going to hire someone whose resume says they do a bunch of different things? They'd have to be crazy, and that's just how it is, and they don't. So you have to. Everybody thinks like that. I've gotten all this different experience, and I'm more marketable. No, here's the rule, and this is a very big deal. Law firms do not hire dabblers, at least as associates, and they hire people that can commit and know what they want to do. So anybody can dabble. So you can dabble in 15 different things, but that's not going to get you anywhere. It's one thing I just want to give you one more example, and then I'll move on to the next resume. If this person was interested in the criminal law society, okay, and that's all that was on there. They said, my only activities in Charlotte School of Law were the criminal law society. Then they got out of law school, and all of a sudden they took a job with the district attorney's office, and they worked there for 6 years. And then their next job was with a criminal law firm or something. That's commitment. And it doesn't matter. It's much better to commit in one thing than it is to commit in 15 different things. Who's going to hire a criminal law attorney that's working at the Disney's a legal operations clerk? No one. So putting down on your resume that you dabbled in something does not help you. I just want everyone to understand that it doesn't help you. It hurts you. And everyone does this. I don't know why. The other thing, when you list these certifications, everyone does this too. Again, I'm not being critical of this person, but people are like, what? How to use Lexus? That's like saying, I'm a professional bike rider and know how to ride a bike. Like any attorney knows know how to use Lexus and stuff. It's not, so you don't make yourself look like a dabbler. And this is one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give everyone on this call is anytime you look like a dabbler, everyone's a dabbler. That's why there's not as many successful attorneys. Most people are dabblers, and that's not good. Okay, here's another in-house job. So we'll get this person, but let me do them next. I want to look at this person next. And actually, I like this resume. Okay, so this person, by the way, I can tell immediately. I've never seen this resume, but it's a great resume. Okay, so let's take a look at this person. And this fits in to the example we just talked about. Okay, I have this resume a lot, even the person I've worked in a law firm. Okay, so let's talk about this. So this person graduated apparently in 2006, which is 16 years ago. So they have nothing on their resume. This is coming second. You can see that. The only thing they're putting on here is the fact that they wrote a book review and they were staff editor to the Family Court Review. Perfect. And that they got an academic scholarship. So that's the rule. The rule is you only list stuff on your resume in your law school experience that's extraordinary. And that's all they did. They're just talking about their honors. They're not listing that they were the member of the Students Association in this group. They're just saying what they did. It's relevant. It's great. I look at the person, I'm like, wow, they went to Hofstra, which is a okay law school, but it's in New York. And they're in New York, of course, and I like it. And they're talking about their admittance here, which is fine. You don't need to put Most of the time, by the way, if you're admitted to a U.S. district court, that's okay. But New York, Connecticut, that's great. And then these speaking engagements that come at the end, which is nice. The publications and things, that's fine. And these certifications are also at the end. And these are all, by the way, consistent with what the person does. So I want to be very clear. Like everything on this resume is consistent. This is a great resume. And now I don't like family court review. It's a little different, but that's still the person was the staff editor and the book review editor. That's fine. And the academic scholarship, cum laude in college. So they wrote that down. That's great. This is not an academic type resume. It's great. But everything on here is consistent. These are all the money laundering, cryptocurrency, anti-fraud examiner, which is not an easy thing to get. These are big honors. This is all very consistent. Then the person goes to Deloitte, which is not a good job out of law school. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's not a great job for most people if they're trying to be working in a law firm. But this is great. It's anti-money laundering and economic sanctions. They graduate, they get the job. What the heck? They graduated in 2006. So let me see what's going on here. Okay, this is even, I see. Okay. Let me see. Just look in these dates, 2018. Oh, great. This is even better than I thought. Okay, so the person graduates from law school, right away, they go to work here. Now look at this consistency. They work there for 10 years, then they take a job for 2 years where they go into a company, which is awesome. And then not only that, and then after that, they go, it looks like back to the Suffolk, they become a bureau chief there and do all this. And then they go back then they even get welcomed back to their employer, the one they worked at before. Wow, this is amazing resume. I have no criticism of this resume. Now, I don't like all of this stuff here with all these bullets and everything, but this is an awesome resume. And I want to explain why. This is a great resume because it shows complete consistency. This person knows exactly what they want to do. They're not a dabbler. This person is 100% consistent in terms of what they're doing. They've been consistent since 2006. They've done another one too. They've done the exact same thing. And this is an amazing resume. This person, by the way, is marketable to law firms. They're marketable everywhere. And this person, even though they may be hard, but any law firm would look at this person very seriously. This is a great resume. And the reason it's so good is because it's consistent. And this is what every resume should do. You see, every resume we've looked at today for law firms, and I just want to go, is inconsistent. Like this person, what does this person want to do? They're doing employment, okay, but they've had 15 different jobs doing it. There's no loyalty to one employer. There's nothing, just moving around. This person, again, they're working, co-founding their own company. They've had a different contract, funding, White and Case. Everything was good up to here. This person, what's this next one? This is just academic. We can't tell what this person wants to do. We can't tell what this person wants to do. There's all these different jobs and things. But this resume, when we get to this one, I'm just sorry to be so impressed, but this is amazing. And again, look here, ADA, unit chief, bureau chief. This person is just nothing but a constant improvement and achievement in one thing. They're not a dabbler. This is what everyone should aspire to. And again, I'm not trying to point this person out, but this is what a good resume is. This person knows what they want to do, and that's why they were welcome back. And look at this. Every 2 years, this person was promoted and kept moving up ranks. It's freaking amazing. Great. Everything about this person. Now, after 10 years, they decided maybe I'll do something else. And they went and worked in New York City doing this big stuff. But this is a great resume. Everything about it is consistent. There's nothing on this resume that's inconsistent with what this person does. And that's what's so powerful about it. And anybody that sees this resume, law firm, company, other district attorney's office, is going to take this and it's going to go right to the top if they have any type of need. Absolutely. Because this person knows what they're doing. Most people, by the way, and this is the problem, most people have no idea what they want to do. And it's sad. If you don't know what you want to do and you don't commit to anything, all that's going to happen is if you do not have a plan and a commitment, You're just going to follow other people's plans. And at their mercy. See, it doesn't matter where you go to law school. It doesn't matter. This isn't the best law school in the world, but it doesn't matter. None of this matters. It doesn't matter. See, most resumes, by the way, if this said, and I'm not trying to be rude here, but if this said Harvard or Stanford or Yale or something, you probably wouldn't see this consistency. You'd see someone that took a job and then they moved to another job and then another job and then and if you know what you want to do, it doesn't matter. Now, you can do anything. Again, you may not think you're smart, and I don't care if you're smart or not smart, but if you know what you want to do, you can do anything. And I love this resume. This is a great resume. I have nothing bad to say about it other than nothing. I would probably tighten up some of this language, but it's very good. So this is what, and I just want to be very clear with everyone, and I keep saying that, but someone that's been looking at resumes every day for 25 years, and I look at them every day, and I study them, and I have to review them. It's very hard to see a resume like this and it's inspiring because you see just nothing but improvements. And this is not a law firm resume either. The law firms, people that do well in law firms, and what does it take to do well in a law firm? It basically takes commitment. It takes knowing what you want to do. It takes a lot of things. If you know what you want to do, you're 10 times better off than someone that doesn't. So this great resume, perfectly happy with it. Another thing, I want to bring up a couple other things. A lot of people in this person's situation too might say, oh, I'm going to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, more prestigious. They might try to do other things, but this commitment is amazing. This person's never tried there's no law firm. It's the same practice setting, which is very good. There's no confusion about the practice setting. If you go into a company, most times people will leave the company, as you've seen with all these company resumes. And we'll look at one again. The people that go to companies typically move around a lot. So let's look at this one. Okay, Chief Compliance Officer of a North American office, a worldwide leader in aerospace and defense. Okay, great. Licensed attorney, respected for problem solving and driving cultural change. Okay, so this is obviously done, not obviously, but probably by a resume company. Okay, compliance, and I don't even know what cultural change means, but that's not an easy thing to do, I wouldn't think. Multi-year process, values, policies. Okay, so here we get into, so this person is a leader, which is good, but these terms, and again, this is an in-house resume, which is fine. But you have cultural change, and then you have chief compliance officer, but then ethics and compliance. Okay, then compliance, corporate and legal compliance. Okay, so so when you start seeing these same words over and over again, like compliance, that's actually good. I don't know what this cultural change is. I don't like resumes that use things like this just because this resume could work very well in-house because some companies may be like, we need someone to help us change our culture because we're dishonest or whatever. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so Airbus, 10 years. Okay, great. I don't know you need to put that. Head in M&A compliance, head in A. Okay, legal and compliance. Okay, corporate development, M&A. Okay, so this resume, by the way, there's some things I like about it, and I'll just show you right here. I like the number of years. This is 9 years. And then you can see here, there's all this upward movement. Again, it's very similar to the last one we saw. And this is a good resume for what this person does. And yeah, this is good. This particular resume, it's not the greatest resume probably for a law firm, but it's a good resume. And then they started out, they clerked, and then they worked at Skadden, and then they've had the first job 4 years, but then the next job, you can see that they just stayed with there for a long time. So this is a great resume. I don't really have anything negative to say about it. And now as a law firm resume, I don't think it's that great, but this is a rare type of resume for an in-house because what this person has done is they've been able to have a lot of employment stability, which is very rare for corporate resumes, people that go in-house. But it's actually one of the things I would say is when you start talking about firms like your top kind of New York firms, your top New York firms, a lot of times you see a lot more stability many times from those resumes than you do from others. I don't know why that is, but maybe that's better habit. I don't know. Again, I'm not judging that, but this is a good resume. So I don't really have anything negative to say about it. I think that this person is doing very well. I think everyone knows that I would not put this stuff up here. I think that this has to go out. One of the things I don't like when I see this cultural change and all the sort of things is that it makes it sound more like the person's not willing to work and they're doing something else. So that's just been values, policies. They're just these real kind of amorphous terms that a lot of times don't work. This is an excellent resume. Oh, look, the person even got they do get an MBA. Amazing. Magna cum laude. Yeah. And you can see here's someone that went to Columbia Business School and I don't even know where they went to law school. Not on, maybe we took it off for some reason, but joint global. I mean, I don't know, but they don't, you can see here, like they don't have, here, Juris Doctor from St. Louis, Missouri, but from St. Louis University. They don't have any, they're not talking about all these associations and things that they were in. They're just talking about the fact that they went to St. Louis University and graduated magna cum laude. And then later they incredibly went and got a MBA and 15 years after graduating from law school, or 15, which is amazing. But you can see this person's not listing all these associations and moot court and no, because the value's from what they've done. And honestly, this is how the best resumes typically read. They're very short. They don't go into a lot of detail. This person here, look, associate corporate finance and M&A, 1994 to 97. They don't need to give a lot of detail. So you do not need to give, now I don't know, and they didn't give a lot of detail to this Citigroup job either. Now they did give a lot of detail here because I think enough, but there's not a ton of detail. There's less detail on the way on this resume than there is for people that are law students many times. They're managing 5,000 employees, so that's a big deal. But you can see here, they don't need to talk about what they did at Skadden Arps. Everybody knows what it means to do associate corporate finance and M&A at Skadden Arps between 1994 and 97. That's a big deal. Everyone knows what it means to be working at Citigroup Capital Markets. They don't even say what they did. And I think what's so powerful about this, I want everyone to understand, is less is more. So less is more when you work at Skadden Arps or these types of places. Less is more. You don't need to, if you put too much information on your resume, you make yourself look weak. Information on your resume. You make yourself look. And I want to show you something here. So on this, if this person had said, here's what a lot of people would do. Worked at one of the most prestigious law firms of the world's most prestigious. You don't need to do that. Or they'd say represented, and then you talk about 15 different companies and whatever different companies, and you talked about it in detail. You don't need to do that. This is enough. People don't need any more, and people don't even know what you did as a clerk. People don't need to know the associations you were part of at St. Louis University. That's it. Again, there's so many positive things here, but the other thing is too, is your resume, and this is another important thing, and resume needs to show upward mobility. Years ago, and again, I don't know, when I say years ago, I'm talking like 20 years ago. I remember I was reviewing all the placements that I made or something, and one of the things that's very important when people are reviewing your resume is they need to believe that the employer needs to believe and I'll even say this, are you moving up by going to the employer as part of a larger plan? So some people, some resumes, and again, this life hands you what it does, and it's too bad because I've certainly had a lot of setbacks, but life hands you what it does. But the point is your resume needs to show upward mobility. If it shows sideward mobility, that's not good. But upward mobility means where you go, you improve and do well. And it's the next logical step in fulfilling a goal you have and have always had. and or hope and have hopefully always have. So what's interesting when you review good resumes, this person is the reason this is a good resume is because this person's okay. I went to these schools, my education, whatever. This is what I did. I did this job for 4 years. They don't need to. They spent 4 years of their life working on all this stuff. They don't need to give you all this detail. But then they start out here. They get their chief counsel, then their vice president, and then their vice president of. They did corporate insecurities, governance, and then they did M&A. Very good. And then all of a sudden they go from working internationally. And then they're also, now here they are again working internationally in all these different areas, and they keep improving in their titles. So who would you hire? Would you hire someone that is going to improve and gets better everywhere they go and is a winner? Or would you hire someone that sticks around and commits and all this stuff is what this person does and has always done well and has come has improved themselves? Or would you hire someone that with the opposite, who's got a sense of entitlement and believes that they deserve the stuff and isn't willing to put in the time and will leave when things get tough and they're dabbling? And this is not that person. This is a very good life and career this person's had. Now, the other thing I want to say too that's very interesting, and I want to show you, this person went to St. Louis University. That is not a great law school, okay? As what was the last one we looked at? Whatever, the last one of the really good attorney was, no, it doesn't matter. But this person went to St. Louis Law School and has had an amazing career. Firms like Skadden and Cravath and other places, they don't hire just from the best law schools. They hire from everywhere. And because they want to hire people without a sense of entitlement. They love people from the Midwest. They love people from St. Louis. And this person, by the way, is probably the worst thing that could have happened to this person would have gone to Harvard or something and gotten a sense of entitlement. This person probably got into this clerkship and then to Skadden and was very excited and was like, I'm just going to put my head down and this is amazing what's happening to me, and I'm very excited. And now I'm not saying that's what happened because I don't know this person at all, but I'm telling you that where you go to law school doesn't matter. And it's very important. What's more important than where you go to law school is the commitment you put into focusing on your career, and focus matters. And so the law school is almost to a really good career meaningless. Now, I would say, I don't know what this person makes, but this person makes probably more money than the majority of attorneys working in law firms in the country. And not only that, but is probably dealing with some really exciting stuff and great career, and probably, frankly, more exciting than working at Skadden. So I have nothing against people that go in-house when they commit. But this is a very good resume. But the point is that it doesn't matter where you go to law school. People are so impressed with where they went to law school, but that's actually for a lot of firms is a drawback. I have law firms who are like, don't send me people, and they'll name, say, Yale or whatever, because they're like, we don't need this attitude. We just want people that are going to work. And so I wanted to make that point with this particular resume. Same thing with this one. Another great career. Whoever this person is, I don't know if this is the real office they're in, another great resume, just freaking amazing. Okay, let's see this one. University of Mumbai, Juris Doctor, LLB. Okay, so I don't know. This is a foreign resume, and so I'm not an expert in these foreign resumes. 2021. Now, there's nothing US on this resume, but one thing I would say is I think a lot of this is fun. I don't think you want Microsoft and document automation and contract analysis, all this stuff, critical thinker, that's what attorneys are supposed to do. Tech savvy is fun. And then, yeah, this is a foreign resume, so I can't really offer a lot of input in it, but I will say that I actually think it looks like a pretty good resume. I do look at resumes in India for other purposes from time to time, but this doesn't look to me like a bad resume. One thing I would recommend, this is an important point, is if you went to law school in a foreign country and you did really well in a foreign country, you need to make lawyers aware of what that means. So I had someone I was representing once, and I think they went to law school in Scotland or something. And I asked them, I don't know why I needed it, but letters of recommendation, and which is not something you always need, but they were having a hard time getting a position. And all of a sudden they got a letter from their law school that was like, this person's highest grades in the past 30 years or something. And all of a sudden that person was turned into was getting lots of interviews when before they wouldn't. Okay, let's see this resume. This is another in-house resume. So we've looked at a lot of them. Let me maybe come back to this one. But these core competencies, again, this stuff, again, not necessary. Summary, not necessary. You don't want to ever have to summarize your resume. Your resume should really speak for itself, and that's going to help you. Okay. And again, here, the problem with this resume, you can see the difference. This person went to Brooklyn Law School, which is frankly a better law school than the last one we saw. And these computer skills, not necessary. Computer involvement, that's interesting. But what's interesting about this resume is School of Aged Child Care Attorney, volunteer, Latino justice. What I like about, not a Republic, probably not. What I like about this resume that's interesting is this person's trying to help children. And they've been doing that since 2015. They're doing immigration, and then what I would try to do, and this is probably what the person's interested in or was, I haven't worked in a few years, I would try to do something along the lines of reframe this resume to make it look like that's more of what you're interested in doing. This additional experience, again, they say court calendar clerk, legal assistant, I would say clerk, and we've talked about all that before, but all this experience is getting a little bit overwhelming because there's so much of it. And yeah, let's see here. And licenses, memberships, community involvement. Okay, this is a good resume. This is an attorney resume. Okay, Brewer injury law. Okay, principal. So I don't know what that means, but okay, that means owner. Okay, we'll take a look at that. Let's see. Okay, so this resume is interesting. So this person, let's take a look at that. So they graduated in December 2010. You can see here they put their honors, they did the right thing there. They don't have a lot of detail to go with that. And then they did their MBA and they put their GPA, which is great. And then that. So that's very good. I think that's interesting. There's just not a lot of detail and you don't need it. The GPA was really good. And then they were on the law review at San Diego. So those are all good things. Now, Consumers Association of California, what that is, these are people it's a group of attorneys that are plaintiff's attorneys. So this is a plaintiff's attorney, which is good. So let's talk a little bit about what this person has done. So they graduated in 2010. There's no jobs on there after 2010. Maybe sometimes may not be the actual, we may have modified this resume. Okay, so then from 2010, they did personal licensure. Okay, they were an associate doing, okay, so again, you do not want to, when you summarize your experience, let me see here. So I'm just looking at this. Yeah, when you summarize your experience on your resume, summarize your experience. Resume. Do not make yourself look weak. You need to put your best foot forward. Your best foot forward. Okay, so what does that mean? So the problem with what this person's doing here is they're essentially an associate, and that's it. And if you take a look at this other resume where this person was at frickin' Skadden Arps, let's take a look at that. That here. Right. Yeah, the attorney that was at Skadden Arps, look what they wrote. Skadden Arps, associate. That's it. You don't need to, sorry, give me 1 second here. That's not the document I wanted. Let me stop sharing it for a second. And it looks like there's a lot of questions, so I will answer them. Just give me 1 second. Okay, oops, sorry, give me 1 second. This is my workshop. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so back to this resume. So and again, I will answer all these questions that people have. So once we get through these resumes, we're almost done with them too, by the way, and then we'll take a quick break and come back and do questions. So you can see here, you don't need all of this information. Now, the problem with this resume, and it's a fairly, let me put that. It's a fairly serious problem, is this person's doing real estate and litigation. They started doing it there. And now they're doing litigation defense. Okay. And then here they're doing real estate, and now they're doing personal injury and real estate because that's what they've learned, and that's okay. But the problem is you need to have, there needs to be some consistency in terms of what the kind of work that the person's doing. And now the person's a member of the Consumer Attorneys Association in California. Now, for anyone that's on the call that's interested in personal injury or is a personal injury, it's a very marketable practice area. There's a lot of firms that need personal injury attorneys. It's a very big practice area. It's growing, especially in California. So that's that. But the problem, as you can see here, is that the law firm experience needs to have some sort of specialty. So if you say you're doing a bunch of different things, people don't like that. And that's going to turn people off. So here, what I would, and other thing too, with all these different jobs, that's a problem too, because it's, okay, there's 4 years, 1 year, 1 year, 2 years, and now they're trying this. So the odds of this person sticking around wherever they're hired is not good. So what do I recommend when people have all these jobs on their resume? And there's a lot of people like this. The most successful people, the way you do it is you take all of this experience and you just, instead of confusing your audience, you do something like this. And this is important. Let me just show you here. And these locations don't matter. Here it looks like, because this person's moving all over California, they're moving to the desert and they're moving to the Rancho Mirage, which there's very nice places they live too, by the way, it looks like. But you just basically say the dates, which should be from date to date. And I get the sense the person, and again, this is very common, he may have had some issues with a California bar or something just because of the way the resume reads. I would just say and this way you could take off, you don't need to draw attention. If you graduated, for example, you graduated in 2010, and maybe you, and this again, this is not being critical. A lot of people in California, it's very difficult to pass the bar. I don't know what there was back then, but it might have been like a 35% pass rate. So sometimes people don't pass right away. But sometimes what you do is you would just say from 2010 to 2020 or 2020, or whatever year they graduated from 2010 to 2020, was an associate. Was associated with various law firms, as an associate, including telecom, something like that. Now, you don't want to lie that you were an associate in the capacity of associate, but something along those lines. This makes it very clear. And then here, you just say personal injury law firm, and then something like that. And then all of a sudden, associate with various law firms, and maybe you could put that you did trials and all that sort of thing, but this makes it much stronger to the readers. Now, the professional engineering license, many people might say, oh, that's irrelevant. It's probably not, because an engineer that's negotiating auto collisions could be much better. But this is the way you give people like 1 cent and you make yourself look more consistent in terms of what you're doing. And this resume all of a sudden is a very good resume. If I saw this resume, I would be interested. Now, I did want to say one thing. Most law firms do not like solo practitioners. The reason for that is they not like solo practitioners or people from other practice settings. But I'll just say solo practitioner. The reason for that is because if you went and did that once, you are likely to do it again. And maybe difficult to manage. So I'll tell you a couple quick stories. It's pretty funny, but I have hired in the past people with solo practitioner on their resume. Don't tell me why I did it. In most cases, this was decades ago, but every single one of those people that I ever hired, and I can think of 2 or 3 examples, was maintaining a solo practitioner practice on the side without my knowledge, while being paid under 6 figures by me. This was only discovered after they were let go for coming in late all the time and other things along those lines. And in two cases, they went and did this to a couple other employers who also caught them. And then one time I read about it in the news, which was fun. But the idea is you really want to make sure that law firms, especially more established law firms, will make that decision. Okay, I think this is the last resume, and then we'll take a quick break. I'll come back and answer questions. And then if other people sent their resume, I'll also try to review those as well. Okay, so this person's calling themselves a corporate legal leader. So and a lot of people do this. Again, these sorts of statements, anytime you see a resume with these sorts of statements on it, typically what's happening is, and I'm not trying to be facetious, either if you're calling yourself that, it's a problem. But if someone else is calling you that, which is more likely, it's a resume writer, a professional resume company. And what these resume companies do, and this, again, I'm not in this business. I have been before, but it's not anyway, but anytime a company, someone's calling themselves that, it's probably not the person calling themselves that, but if it is, it's fine. But typically a resume company does that. The reason they do that is because they're working for a company that's paying them. If this person was at this made-up company, ESCO Technologies, and then left, the ESCO may have said, hey, we've got a great outplacement firm, and the outplacement firm writes resumes, and then after they've written the resume, they ask the person, how did you like your resume? Was it excellent? And so the resume company keeps their business, or the outplacement firm, based on impressing and making the people that work there or that get the jobs they do the work for happy. So if you call someone a corporate legal leader, which is they were probably a corporate legal leader at that firm, and then they're going to like you. And so if someone calls me a world-class something or other, I'm going to be like, yeah, I like that. And so this is what these resume companies do. So anytime you see this, it's like the person's used a resume company. You do not want your resume to look like a resume company did it. You do not want to compliment yourself on your resume. On your resume by calling yourself different things. Which would be like corporate legal leader, amazing negotiator, and all that sort of thing. So if you look at Donald Trump may be an exception, but if you look at presidents and top leaders and stuff, most of them are not talking about how great they are all the time. So second someone does that, you lose respect for them. So it's just how it works. And again, this person probably didn't even do this to themselves. This goes at the back. So you put your bar admissions at the end of your resume. Not at the top. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to bring up too, and this is important. So a lot of times, and again, this is not being critical, I've known, but a lot of times if people don't pass the bar exam, like I was able to figure out from this person's, resume that may have been the case, but you go up here, and we went to one of these earlier resumes. Let me take a look up here in North Carolina. We looked at that. Here we go. This resume, was this the resume? Give me 1 second. And one of the things about attorneys is they don't like, and this, I think it was this person that put this. So if this person graduated from law school in 2016 and they're putting their bar status here past the July 22 bar exam, but they were out of school 6 years, that's drawing attention to either they didn't want to take the bar until July 2022, which maybe they didn't need to because they had other types of jobs, or they didn't pass. So you need to be very careful on your resume. You need to be very careful about drawing attention to your weaknesses, unless you're using them for your advantage. Using those for your advantage. So this person that wrote on their resume, and I'll explain to you what that means. This person that wrote here on their resume that they just passed the bar exam, that's not good. So if it took you it takes a couple of years, that's fine. But 6 years is a long time. Or if they just passed, employers are going to say, hey, that's great. You just passed the bar after 6 years. We come on in. That's not how it works. Like, and now if this person's applying for jobs and then they say, are you admitted to the bar? And they say, I was doing e-discovery, I didn't need it, but I just took it and I passed. That's fine. But drawing attention to it this way is just going to freak people out. And so you need to be very careful about drawing attention to your weaknesses. I noticed this very early on when I was in this business, is that what happens to attorneys and what happens is no one likes it when lawyers draw attention to their weaknesses. And the reason is because I think it's almost historic, is if you're representing a client, you have to put on a really good face for that client. And that should be just natural to you. If you are putting on a bad face for yourself and talking yourself down and saying negative things about yourself, and that's bad. And so law firms don't like that. And it's just lawyers almost have a instinctual negative reaction to that. And it's just how it's always been in the profession. So you have to look like you're strong. You have to look like you know what you're doing, and you don't want to draw attention to your weaknesses. Your job as an attorney is to cover up your client's weaknesses. So as someone who's representing yourself, your job as an attorney is to cover up your client's weaknesses. And make them look strong. Therefore, you should be able to do the same for yourself. An expert in doing this for yourself. So drawing attention, if you're pointing out, if your weaknesses are coming through in your resume, lack of focus, coming through in your resume, what does that mean for your potential client? So if you go into a doctor's office, and I'm just giving you this example, and your doctor says, whew, it took me 4 or 5 tries, but I finally passed the licensing exam to be a doctor. That's not going to inspire a lot of confidence. No doctor is going to draw attention to that. If your doctor says, oof, I've been sued 8 times for medical malpractice and only had to pay fees in 3 or 4 of them, that's not going to make you confident. If your doctor says, I tried working in patients, I tried these different practice areas, I've done this, I was a doctor for a while, and then I decided to go write a book and do something else, but now I'm back. Isn't this great? That's not going to inspire a lot of confidence. So your resume needs to inspire confidence. Okay, so this person is specialized in purchase of e-commerce. Great, this is fine. Handle mergers, acquisitions, general employment matters. I would take off general employment there. There in this resume. And this actually looks fine. Deals per month, I don't know if that's necessary, but that's great. So it's perfectly fine. Now, this is an example you can see here of someone that went from working in-house back to a law firm. Now, this is, again, not that common, but it happens typically in smaller legal markets. In a smaller legal market, and this is a point for everyone on the call as well, is in a smaller legal market, an attorney can many times get positions they normally wouldn't get in a larger legal market. Larger legal markets would expect this person to be an expert and to only do this and to be coming from the correct practice setting, and they would demand it because they can, because in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, there's plenty of people. But in this particular case, no. So then here's all this information here. This person's been an in-house counsel and all these different things. They went to a great law school, did extremely well, which I'm not surprised by. Let's talk about this. So merit scholarship, fine, that's great. Moot court winner, fine. Finalist, great. Best brief, AmJur awards, amazing. So even though there's a lot of stuff on here, it's all very good. This academic performance is astonishing. And that may explain why also the person was able to get back into a law firm. Then they also worked at a very big law firm in St. Louis. And then here's their college. They were a CPA, which is great. Then Central Reformed Congregation. Oh, these are activities and professional organizations and interest. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. This is fine. This is fine, being a member of this congregation because there's a board membership. Now, And then I don't know what this is, and triathletes, amazing. This is all fine. Now, typically I recommend not putting religious and all this sort of stuff on there, but this is actually kind of interesting. The person's a membership board member and everything. And I think it's okay when you have a leadership thing. If this person was just saying I was a member of this Reformed Jewish congregation, that probably would not be great, but there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, but showing leadership in something is great. So this person is obviously very motivated. The fact that they're a triathlete, what's nice about this is that really shows a lot of motivation and so forth. What I would recommend here is, again, anytime you have all these different jobs, you can see here that this person has been, and this is typically, by the way, this is typically how your in-house resumes read. This is another example of someone that worked in Bryan Cave until 1992. Then they went right into doing labor and litigation for Southwest from banking. But you can see they had that job for 3 years. Then they had another, then they actually turned into 5 years. And then they decided to leave there and go to Furniture Brands, where they stayed for 3 years. Then they went to this firm and stayed there for 19 years, which is awesome. And probably in the course of that, probably used this firm to do work or something, but it's great. I don't like the inconsistencies on this resume, but in terms of different practice areas, I would probably shorten these two things like that. So I'm going to take a quick break just for 2 or 3 minutes. When I come back, I will take all the questions you have. We may have some other resumes I can review, but I would prefer probably at this point to go through the questions and people may have and I'll answer anything that's relevant to what we've talked about today and any other questions you have as well. And this is a live webinar. I can certainly answer as many questions as possible. One of the things I did want to apologize for, and I'm not going to do it on this call, is that my Grammarly software wasn't loading. But one thing I would recommend for all of your resumes is you need to put all resumes and cover letters through Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid or whatever you use, to be consistent, to make sure things are fixed. People make mistakes on their resumes all the time. And I'll just show you real quickly what will happen to this if I put this in Grammarly, because there's going to be a ton of errors. So I'd rather critique myself, and then I will send this to everyone. But let me just show you kind of how this works. If you guys girls have not used it before, but it's a great program. And this is just one example. But if you put stuff in here like this, you can see all these huge amount of errors. This is spacing errors. These are, you can rephrase things. And so it's all very useful to do, and for everything, for the commas. And the problem is people will make mistakes when they're writing things. And because you're making mistakes, you will often not catch them. Even when you reread your own things, you won't catch them. Almost every resume that I review has lots of mistakes in them. With our own candidates, we run them through these programs, and then we have other people also review them manually. So sometimes, even when you're making all these changes, the Grammarly may do things incorrectly, but you really do need to. You can see just all of these huge amounts of errors and things that are in even what I wrote, and you do need to really fix them. So I'm going to send everybody all these rules and things before this is over today, or I'll try to send it today. I'll send it before the call's over. I'll just put it in the chat. But it is very important to make sure you run everything through this. And some other things are just and I just wanted to bring this up very quickly, is a resume rule is everything needs to be very direct. So another thing, one of the things that the best lawyers do, I can always tell when I'm dealing with a bad lawyer, because they'll say stuff like heretofore and use all these words that they think sound big and make them important. And the best lawyers are always very good communicators. They communicate directly, they communicate succinctly, and you need to be able to do that in everything that you do. And that's extremely important. So your resume you should review it. And anytime you're doing anything, you should review your resume and make sure it's always as succinct and direct as possible, and that you don't have information that's not necessary on there. People don't like it when you make them work. So it's a lot of work for employers to have to review a resume. And if they have to go through it and figure out what you do and think they're not going to like that, they would rather see that you were an M&A associate, for example, at a big law firm and just see that than have to be treated to a long drawn out discussion about that and with a bunch of things. It's just much easier for them. And then when I come back in a few minutes, I'll take as many questions as everyone has. Thank you. Okay, so this first one is regarding detail on the resume. Do you consider the impact of AI and screening to simplicity potentially miss out on keywords? So no, you don't want to put in AI is not necessary. AI can be used to screen your resume. I don't know if it's AI. There's resume programs that will look for keywords and relevant to your practice area. One thing I would recommend doing, and I'll just put this, and I've never shared this before, but I'll share it right now. Give me 1 second, is on the BCG site. If you go to bcgsearch.com, and I'll put the link for everyone in let me just, here's the link. Whoop, that's not what you need. Let me just see here. There's a practice area guide. So you can go into these guides on BCG. Now, these are a lot of different practice areas and different keywords and things, but these would be, if you were like a DUI attorney, you would take a look at like these and try to come up with keywords and things that apply to whatever your keywords are. Now, this is a relatively new thing that we added, and there's still a lot of work going on, but I will put this in the chat right now for everyone, just so you can take a look at it. But the idea would be, let me see how to do that. I'll just put it up here. The idea would be with your resume, if you're doing a certain practice area, say your practice area is a corporate M&A, then there's nothing wrong with putting some keywords that are relevant to corporate M&A in your resume. And that's perfectly fine. I don't know if it's AI that does the screening. I think it's more like people will do keyword searches to try to find resumes that have certain terms. But for the most part, in order to do that, you do want to make sure that you do whatever you can to have matching keywords. So with AI, the person's question was, with AI, what do you want to do to share? What do you need to do? So there's this practice area guide right here on BCG, which is pretty much describes all the practice areas there are, any type of practice area. And what you would want to do would be to go and look at what your practice area is and then try to have keywords that are relevant to that in your description. But for the most part, I don't think simplicity doesn't really miss keywords. People are looking more for especially law firms, no other law firms. So they're looking for your practice area and your location, and locations of interest and that sort of thing. So not necessarily those keywords, but I do recommend that you look at your keywords, because if you do have keywords in your descriptions that are matching other practice areas, like we looked at several today, and we saw that some people were calling themselves real estate attorneys and personal injury attorneys, and then you're better off not having keywords than having keywords that conflict. So that's the first thing I would say. And I don't know that people are, we do a lot of very sophisticated things to review resumes, but when it comes down to it for law firms, most of the time they're looking for just people with certain types of experience, and that's about it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, there's just a lot of questions. Okay, so here's a question, another question. I'm just going to go through and answer all these. There's a lot of them. I got my bar card in December 2021 with no job lined up. I started solo practice because I like to eat, but it's my desire to work in a law firm. How do I adjust solo practice? Look, I have multiple tendencies. So if you are a solo practitioner, you can definitely get a position. But the problem with solo practitioners for a lot of different types of firm jobs is you may be doing a lot of different things. So you need to decide what it is you want to do. And most solo practitioners, just because of the nature of the work, have to do consumer-facing work. So consumer-facing is things like trust in estates. It would be trust in estates. It can be, just write this, trust in estates, personal injury. It can be, you name it, trust in personal estates, personal injury, workers' comp, whatever it is you do, you want to tax resolution. You want to try to make sure that you specialize in something. and try to make your resume look like you're specializing. So there's nothing wrong, by the way, with being a solo practitioner. And solo practitioners can get jobs with law firms all the time, but you have to look like you're focused. And if you, for example, are a workers' compensation attorney and you're bringing those cases, or you're doing tax resolution or something, you can always get a position with another firm that's doing that, but it's going to be a smaller firm. The idea that everyone should keep in mind is your objective as an attorney is to, if you're trying to get a job in a law firm, and you want to get trained, and you're going to be trained much more effectively and much better in a law firm than if you're doing it yourself. Now, people family law is another big one. People start their own practices all the time, but do very well. And I know some really successful attorneys that started their own practice and never worked in a law firm, and immigration's another one, and never could get hired, and now have these incredibly successful practices. But you need to make sure that you specialize in something. If you don't specialize in something, then you're going to be in trouble. And if you try to do a corporate facing practice area, not corporate facing, meaning working for companies then you're going to that's not a recipe for success, because the only the people that are going to hire you are going to be people with these types of this. Now, if it was me and I was in your situation, I would make sure that whatever you do as a solo practitioner, you specialize in something and pick one thing. And if you pick one thing, become an expert, get on committees, do whatever you can and learn and take classes. And these are all the things that successful attorneys do. And unsuccessful attorneys don't do that. So and don't try to do multiple things. And then if you do that, you can be very successful. So there's nothing wrong with being a solo practitioner. As a matter of fact, I'm in business networking groups with extremely successful solo practitioners that have big businesses and that are doing $10 or more million a year in revenue and have 25 plus employees. One second. Let's see. This is all stuff. There's nothing wrong with being a solo practitioner. The problem is if you don't specialize. And solo practitioners, by the way, are small firms. If you have this experience, will always hire you. And just the only mistake that a lot of people make when they're trying to get jobs is they think that they need to work on corporate facing firms, which are the large firms and firms that represent companies. And that's very difficult to do if you're not employed or you're a solo practitioner without that kind of experience. If you pursue entrepreneurship and want to go back to law, do you frame your experience highly in legal work or just leave it off altogether? So the thing about being an entrepreneur that I would say to you is, most times when someone's an entrepreneur, they do it because they didn't want to practice law. So being an attorney, the attorneys that are entrepreneurs, typically their entrepreneur experience means opening a law firm because they like practicing law. Attorneys represent others. They're interested in others' problems. They want to help people solve their problems. They want to take the side of other people and it's a protector type of mentality. And it's about helping other people and not necessarily yourself. That has to come first. Now you can certainly start a business of that. But if you did do an entrepreneur, my first thing would be questioning if you really do want to practice law. Most people that do entrepreneur related stuff don't. But if they do practice law, they typically want to have their own firm and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I think this is important, especially for a lot of young attorneys that have friends and other people that are starting firms and believe it's important, is I think a lot of people, especially when they're young, are sold by other people with the idea that it's better to have your own business or to have your own company is a big deal, and or you should be an entrepreneur. And listen, certain people are certain types of people. I would not be a good accountant. It doesn't come naturally to me. It's not the kind of stuff I enjoy. I went to school once and was a couple days in and was like, this is insane. It's not something I'm interested in. And because I would not want to be a doctor. There's nothing wrong with not being attracted to entrepreneurship. You shouldn't do something because you think it's a good thing because other people think it's good. And you should do something because it comes naturally to you. If you are someone with a medical leaning, you will figure out a way to be a doctor. If you are someone with an entrepreneurship leaning, you will figure out how to be an entrepreneur. If you are someone with a legal leaning, you will figure out a way to always put yourself in a law firm and all these sorts of things. So these are natural type skills. People that are scientists and work in labs, that's a natural thing. People that are law professors have a natural bent towards that. So there's nothing wrong, by the way, with being an entrepreneur, but you need to want to be a lawyer first if you're doing it. It needs to come natural to you. And I had a very interesting experience. I'll just bring this up to everyone. And it was funny. There was when I was in law school, and I had a professor named Peter Swire, who was he was a young professor, and he just graduated from Yale Law School a few years previously, and he was doing this class, and he was very well known. He was bringing in all these really famous people into class and stuff. But anyway, so I was in his class, and I was doing very well. I think I was getting the best grade in his class. And one day he said to me, he's like, "What are you doing? Why are you in law school? I don't get it." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, it's obvious." It's not. And what he saw, which I didn't see, was that there's certain types of people that belong working in law firms and doing that. And there's other types of people that don't belong in law firms. And the point is that and I ended up doing it. And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Best grade in your class. I've got this federal clerkship, and I'm doing all this different stuff, and the grades." But the point is, like, certain people that are natural lawyers are interested in representing people, and it's what their passion is, and they want to figure these things out. And people that are natural entrepreneurs have different things, and people that are doctors and accountants. And so there's nothing wrong with pursuing entrepreneurship, but you need to make sure that if you did that you really want to be a lawyer. And that's one of the most important things. Like, you should get excited about solving other people's problems and getting more responsibility. If you're in a big law firm and you're working on matters, you should be excited about the potential of having more role in solving their problems. This is what all good lawyers do. And that should excite you. And if it doesn't, I was able to convince myself that I like that. But really, there's certain people that are cut out for that. And that's a good personality trait. It's not, but you need to want that. And I want to make sure that I make that clear to everyone, just because a lot of people go into the practice of law and stick with it that shouldn't be doing it. You should be doing whatever you like. And there's nothing wrong. You could be I don't know, I knew one guy that was an attorney at White and Case, and his dream was to start a bike shop in South Florida, like selling racing bikes for riding. And that was his dream. That's what he should be doing. He shouldn't be working in a big New York law firm. It's crazy. Okay, should I write a summary of my CV and a cover letter? Does it sound like resume company thing? You don't need to write a summary you don't need to write all this information in your cover letter. I hate to say it, but cover letters, and I'm happy to do a cover letter meeting next week, and I'll just try to schedule that. I was going to do state of the market. Maybe I'll do it the week after, but cover letters just need to be short. I'm applying for this job. I think I would be no one really spends a lot of time reading your cover letters. The cover letters are going to more often than not disqualify you. And then if they get very long, people are like, all right, whatever. But if it's very short and direct, that can help. You can certainly write a summary of your CV in the cover letter, but the best cover letters, just so you understand, the best cover letters are ones that summarize, that talk about the job and why you want it. That's the best cover letter, not fluff and not stuff about you. Stuff about the employer. So just think about it, what it would be like if you're an employer. So if you're an employer and someone writes you a letter, "I'm great, this blah, 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 blah," fine. But if they write you a letter and say, "I've always thought very highly of your firm. I've wanted to work there since I was in law school. I interviewed there when I was in law school. Unfortunately, didn't get an offer because, I don't know, whatever. And I've still kept in touch. I've watched in the news and it's been my goal." Wow, that's someone is going to really take you seriously if they see that. And that's your cover letters. The only purpose of a cover letter is just to make a connection with the employer. And if you can do that, then you're much better off. Okay, let's see. Okay. Yeah, so we are sending the Word document. A couple people asked about that, and I will send that. And I'm going to try to answer all these questions. There's a lot of them, but I'll try to get through them all. Okay, here's the next question. And these are great questions too, by the way. I don't like it when I wanted to get through all these resumes because everyone sent them. I did want to say that I feel badly because what we do, like the email that went out about your resumes saying you could send them, didn't talk about how we will strip off and change your employer name and all this stuff, and that should have happened because it is anonymous. But okay, took a job at a law school that mainly does litigation. I realized I don't like litigation. I do some transactional work, enjoy it more. How can I more closely to transaction practice so I won't be labeled as a litigator, but also want to show I have some law experience, some requirements from signatures with 20-year experience. Okay, this is a good question. There's a couple points I wanted to bring up. There's transactional work, and then there's litigation related work. So transactional people typically are math and science. And like people, I don't know what it's called, left brain or right brain. Litigation are typically English, non-English, sci, English sociology, all that kind of stuff. There's also like drama, don't like drama. And so drama and then taking sides. No, do not like. Now these are broad similarities, so they're not completely accurate, but this is pretty much how it works. And one of these may appeal to you more than the other. And so people say all the time, I want to do corporate. And typically when people are saying I want to do corporate, they want to do corporate during really good economies when there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of opportunity. And then when it dries up, they don't. But the point is that there's different personality types, and you could probably take a personality test that would tell you what you're more fit for. But certain people are more interested in litigation type stuff, and others are interested in more drama and contentious and writing and enjoy writing. Do not enjoy writing. Not so much writing. And again, these are personality types. Now, how do you transition from litigation to transactional? So I wanted to bring up a couple points, and because for the longest time, I've puzzled over a lot of stuff that I see. So a lot of people that go to law school they have these incredible backgrounds, and a lot of the time they're not in math and science, they're in English and sociology and political science and Latin, who knows, but just writing type things. And then these people become corporate attorneys and do well. I remember because I look at resumes all day long, and every day I see like resumes of people from Yale and these different schools. But these resumes, a lot of times they have an incredible classic background. Like these people have studied the classics and written these papers and sometimes books and articles. And then all of a sudden they're a corporate attorney at a big firm. And so I think to some extent, being a lawyer is being a lawyer. I hate to say that, but how does someone that has nothing but this incredible background on the class and writing and stuff suddenly become a corporate attorney and succeed? And so to some extent, I've always said being a lawyer is being a lawyer. Is there some truth to that? I think there's some truth, but maybe you don't like litigation. That's fine. And maybe you would like transactional work better because of this. And there's some points, but also to some extent, being a lawyer is being a lawyer. And because it's the same skills, poking holes in arguments, and everything is very similar. It's different and tight language and tricking the other side. And it's all it's all the same. But to answer your question, can you transfer from litigation to corporate? Yes. Now it's probably not a good time, because the market is for corporate is definitely, there's not as much demand as there was. But how do you transition to a corporate practice? So the way to do it typically is to try to do it in the law firm that you're at. So that would be the first thing I would say. In the law firm that you're at, try to start getting that type of experience. If you can't, then go to a law firm where you're maybe hired with the expectation you can do both. But the only other option typically is to, and I haven't talked about this yet in this call, but I'll do it right now. Typically, anytime you want to do something odd, or you have issues with your resume, or want to do something different, or something or trying to do something unusual, you typically have following options. The way the firms work and the way resumes work is 5s are going to be your top firms. Your 4s are going to be your typical AmLaw through AmLaw 100, AmLaw firms. And these are going to be your Gold, Hotel, et cetera, Hotel, Davis Poll, all those kind of places. Firms. And then these are going to be mid-level firms. And these are going to be smaller firms serving businesses and consumers. These are going to be serving only consumers. So there's nothing wrong with being at a 1 firm or a 2 firm. It really doesn't matter. But the point is that these firms are extremely specialized. Meaning if you're at one of these firms are very specialized. These firms are less specialized. But specialized somewhat. And then these are less and even less. So the reason I'm bringing this up for everyone is so if you're at this firm, you may be doing M&A for pharmaceutical companies, and that's it. If you're here, you may be doing M&A. This is not always accurate, but this is just giving an example. Here you may be doing M&A, securities, general corporate. If you're here, you may be doing general corporate, corporate, litigation, and trust and estates. I'm just giving you an example. Trust and estate. And then here you may be doing, everything. I don't know. But the point is that if you are at a 4 firm doing litigation and you want to suddenly start doing corporate, you're probably going to need to move to a 2 firm which is going to be in a smaller market. And then once you get that experience doing a lot of corporate, maybe you can move to a 3 and then back to a 4. So that's how it works. The only way to move, no 4 firm, if you're at like a big firm, even if you're at a 3 firm and they're not going to want to give you experience in a completely different practice area because they're going to have clients and here's the whole idea. These big firms are paying a ton of money. These clients are paying less money and these clients are paying even less money. And so these firms pay a lot of money because they're getting extreme specialization. And just think about you. Like I know a guy I met, the next guy I went to college with, and he specializes in doing a certain type of brain operation for, young people or children that are born with some kind of condition and charges, a couple $100,000 for this operation, doesn't take insurance. And that's all he does. And he does 10 or 12 of these per year. And that's all he does and makes a lot of money. But that's extremely specialized. Your typical law firm is going to be and so that's why he can charge so much money. And so this is how it works. And if you want to do multiple practice areas, what you need to do, if you want to, change, you're going to need to go down to a smaller firm in most cases. No big firm is going to allow you to do a complete practice area like that. That's the answer. Sorry, I'm trying not to show names. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, here's a good question. And thank you everyone too, by the way, for asking these questions. These are just great questions. And I'm going to try to get to them all because I appreciate everyone spending the time asking them, even though it's kind of a long talk. And the point of consistency of a resume are the following questions. If you worked in an area like banking or insurance, non-legal positions, and then gone to law school to practice law in that area, how should non-legal experience in the same area be presented? Does it add or strengthen to your resume to have both legal and non-legal experience in one consistent field? Okay. Yes, it does. So one of the things, this first question, this is a very good question, by the way, is people I see people all the time that may have done, for example, healthcare. They may have been in the healthcare industry and gone to law school and then want to work as a healthcare attorney. And that's very good. So if you did if you have consistent experience in something, and then you went to law school, then you can definitely present that other experience on your resume, and it helps you. It's a good thing. It will strengthen your resume to have both of those things there, because it shows that you know what you're doing. Just think about you. If you were a law firm and you wanted to hire a sports law attorney, and the person had been a professional athlete and then gone to law school and been in the Sports Law Society and then wanted to work as a sports attorney, you would think, this is great, this is a perfect person. So it's the same thing with law firms. They love it when they see people like that. And this is often, when I look at resumes and I see people that have consistent experience like that, I love it, and it works. So there's certain areas of specialization: trade compliance, which includes ITR and export controls, economic sanctions, and customs law. Most lawyers and law firms tend to specialize in one or two of these areas, but in-house counsel tend to work in all these areas. Does the resume look consistent when it has experience working in these different areas within practice? I unfortunately can't answer that question probably the way you like, because this is one practice area where, again, there's hundreds of practice areas that it's a practice area where I've placed people before. But again, this is a very good question, because it's talking about, and I love this question. This is awesome. And it's actually, there's very few times when I'm on a call like this and people actually trip me up. And this has tripped me up, because I'm the first, I want to admit, I don't understand all the difference between what you're talking about, but you're talking about different types of compliance, and then saying that law firms are specialized. And this is a great question, because I don't understand enough about your practice area, unfortunately. And again, I've been doing this for a long time and have placed lots of people, but I don't understand enough about these differences. But what I would say is, I think if a law firm has an opening for, say, one of these things, and then you have experience in both, typically what you do, anytime there's an opening for something, so an example would be, for something, you lead with your experience and what the opening is. So sometimes, like, an example would be the typical thing is a law firm seeking a capital markets attorney, right? Markets attorney. And you may have experience doing both, doing capital markets and M&A. So what you would do is, on your resume, your resume would say experienced M&A attorney with lots of experience, blah, blah, blah. And then you could have a transaction sheet, and your transaction sheet would lead with your M&A, and then you would also talk about your securities and another heading under that. So this is how people handle that. Now, there's nothing wrong with talking about the fact you've done both. And I think most law firms would be perfectly fine with that, but you would have to, in terms of the way you present it, you do the same. And so law firms all the time are looking for people. If they're looking for an experienced person doing one thing, the only way to deal with that is to make sure your resume leads with that. And then you either de-emphasize or don't talk about your experience and other stuff in the resume as well, if you're comfortable with that. Now, you don't want to lie in your resume, but you want to talk about what your experience is in that practice area. So that's a great question, and I hope I answered your question. Okay, let's see. There's a lot of good questions. Okay, let me just hear. Okay, so here's this one. If you recently started a new position a few weeks ago, we have a chance to interview for a better job. You discussed the recently started job in the interview. Yes. So there's a couple ways to answer that question. You're going to have, that's a very good question. So there's a couple ways to answer that question. So the first thing is, I've seen attorneys do this a lot. So I don't, not a lot, but I've seen them do it before. And actually, I can think of one episode where it happened, so I shouldn't say a lot. But if you are trying to interview for a better job, that's almost like getting married and then someone better comes along and you decide that you would prefer them. There has to be some level of commitment to taking a new job. And now, if the job is much better, like if you're working at in a practice area you don't want to be in a type of firm you don't want to be in, and it's not a permanent job, I don't know what the reason would be, then yes, you do want to interview with a job. Do you discuss the recently started job in the interview? If you probably do need to bring that up, and you do need to give them an updated resume, because if you don't, It's just not good for anyone. But you have to be very careful. And I don't know what the job you started was a couple of weeks ago, but typically you do want to commit to wherever you go. And if you start doing this kind of stuff, you're ultimately going to be in a lot of trouble in your career. It's just as if you were in a relationship and did that. But again, people do this stuff all the time, and you have to look out for yourself. And I'm not telling you what to do, but you need to be very careful with this type of stuff. Is it going to, I don't know, but I would just be very careful is what I would say. Okay, let's see here. It says the chat's coming up as disabled. I don't know. I think the questions are. Okay, let me see here. Sorry, I'm going to go back to some of the earlier questions now. I apologize I was doing a lot of the older questions first. Oh, let me see here. But people were discussing this resume that we saw. Do law firms and it says this question here is, do law firms or employers view resumes created with pre-made templates in a negative light? And I don't know what that means, but no, I don't think so. There's nothing wrong with having your resume in a template form, and I don't know what that means exactly. I'm assuming this person's saying that the resume would, but something that a lot of people no one brought up, and a lot of times I do see this, is resumes that are in funny formats and different colors and things. And you want your resume to be as simple as possible because your job is to communicate as directly as possible. So you don't want to have, let me see here. Okay, let me see this resume. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. So I'm just going through all these questions. Again, I appreciate all these questions. Okay, this is an interview question, but I'm going to answer it after this one. You mentioned avoid non-legal experience. This is also called for quasi-legal experience. No, what I like about quasi-legal experience is you can, many times, there's nothing wrong with having quasi-legal experience on your resume. For example, if you're a compliance attorney or a contract management attorney, like you put on here, and that's what you're currently doing, then that completes the story and it looks consistent. So law firms and employers actually do like that. So that's it's a good question. Let me see here. But yeah, just make sure your experience. Another type of question, interviewer believes he or she is not interviewed well. Does not interview well, made the interviewer request from the law firm or interviewer to come back. The reason could be to learn more about the firm, et cetera. No, I think you don't want to come back. That's going to make everyone uncomfortable. This is a good point, though. I think a lot of people, this is a good point. So like a law firm interview is no different than a courtship of a mate, Both sides need to feel that there's some sort of tension about could not work out. Both sides doing the best they can. One side not more desperate than the other. And so you need to I've dealt with some extremely sophisticated interviewers before that wanted to come work for me, and during the middle of like recessions and all sorts of things. And even then, these people that were unemployed, I'm just thinking of some very good interviewers, made it seem that I had to chase them too. So the employers, if they feel like they need to chase you, there needs to be a little bit of that in everything. Now, it's not like you need to act like you want to work there, but at the same time, they need to believe that you offer a lot more value than whatever you're charging or whatever their salary is. And there needs to be some sort of feeling here that they're going to be lucky to get you. And so if you start going back and interviewing and trying to interview more, sending a lot of letters and calling and thanking, then that starts to turn people off, just as it would turn people off if you went out on a date and suddenly got 4 or 5 texts from someone in a letter and let's meet again fast. And that's just not how it works. So everyone needs to be very careful about that, especially even if you think it's your only opportunity, because it's not. There's tens of thousands, maybe 100. There's so many law firms and employers and legal players. It's insane. Just as if whatever sex you want to date, there's millions of those people. So it's not the only chance in the world you'll ever have. And just because someone's expressed interest in you doesn't mean it's the last. So I don't think you need to worry about it. Okay, so this is another question. So I would caution you to anybody that feels like when you get an interview, if it doesn't work out, you're in trouble, and it's just not the case. Now, I'll tell you one thing that happened to me. It's interesting. So I'm from Detroit, and one of the places that I thought about working when I was in law school was in Detroit. And at the time, I wanted to work at a firm that paid whatever the kind of the market salaries were for the Midwest, which I don't know how much it was. It wasn't very much, like maybe 60,000 or something, or 80. I don't remember, but that's the same they were paying in a lot of the big firms in other cities. But anyway, the point is that there were only like 4 firms in all of Detroit that paid those salaries, or maybe 5. And then there was only one firm that was halfway decent there's a lot of great firms in Detroit, but there was one firm in particular that I wanted to work at because they had all these programs where they'd loan you money to buy a house and all this crazy stuff that just seemed awesome. And so they'd loan you money for a down payment, I think. And at the time, I thought that seemed very exciting. So I really wanted to work at that firm. And I did the same thing. I was like, I would send them letters that I wanted to work there and thank you letters and things, and not the best idea. Now I ended up not working in New York and not that firm in the summer. And then but the point is that anytime you look like you're desperate for something, then people just think, oh, I think obviously they can do better, or I can do better. And you just don't need to put that out there. Could you experience special resume template? And if so, how, say with over 30 years of experience? No, your resume just needs to be short. So do not make people work to understand what you do. So when I started my career, I went to work at this law firm called Quinn Emanuel that was doing very well. It was a smaller law firm back then than it is now. And they were these guys at the time from Cravath, and they had this kind of way that they've been taught to litigate cases. And it was basically, you never have more than, I don't know, half a page or 1 page without a title. And I'll just explain it to you in a second. So the idea would be you would have without a title. So people would never be able to, so you'd have the court should overrule or the court should do this, would be maybe 2. I'm just giving you an example, and then when you make that descriptive, should X because so and X, and then you would never have to read more than a half page before you'd see another one of these subject headings, or maybe it was a page. I don't remember what it was at the time, but it was I think it was a page and a half. 1.5 pages. But the point is that, so a judge could look at these, and all they would do is they would see this, and they would see this, and they would see this, and they would just go through a 10-page brief, and they would just see these, and it would tell them exactly what to do. And then other people would write these long briefs without the title pages and stuff, and it would make the judge work, and the judge the idea was spend time only on the stuff that's title headings because they're busy. So the same thing with people reviewing your resume. They're busy. So they don't want to review a lot. All you need to say is, I worked at this firm, or company, I did this. And you don't need to talk a lot about your experience. If they want to know your experience, they can ask you. But you don't need to spend a lot of time talking about your level of experience. So your resume should be short. Ideally, it should be 1 page. Now, you can do all sorts of things. If you feel like would have a lot of experience, especially in corporate related stuff, you can have a transaction sheet, but 1 page. And once you get more than 1 page, it makes people work. Think about it, how you would feel if you get a letter from, people don't want to have to, it's work. So you want to make things easy for people. And I would say that with litigators, one of the things is that this is just something I learned, is having very short subject, these short headings and stuff, it makes it easier for judges and makes you win more. And same thing with, experience speaks for itself. You don't need to talk a lot. And the other thing that people do too is, if you talk a lot about your experience on your resume and all the things you did, then it draws attention to things you didn't do. Why does this person need to tell me all these different things? These are expected. And sometimes people will be talk about something insignificant, and it becomes annoying. So you put graduation years on your resume. So there's a bunch of different schools of thought to that. A lot of times older attorneys won't put their graduation years on their resume because they don't want to draw attention to their age, which is fine. So I'm not judging that one way or another, but what I would say is, if you graduated in law school, for example, in 2010, but you have 20 years of experience prior to that, and you went to law school later in life, put your graduation year on there. There's nothing wrong with that. And these days, people work forever. There's nothing, but drawing attention to the fact that you graduated in 1977 or something is probably not going to help you, just because It may or may not. If you were a partner, they probably wouldn't care if you had a lot of business, but I don't recommend. You can definitely get in some trouble. Okay, let's say, what do law firms consider a major turnoff from reviewing resumes? So I gave you guys a bunch of rules that I hope you received them that we sent out to you, but the major turnoffs are all the things that I covered today, which are, there's quite a few of them, but one of them is that I would say is not being able to tell what the person does. Tell what the person does. That's a huge one. And no consistency in practice area. So what happens? So this is interesting. So when you take a look at the resumes of people that become contract attorneys, and I'm not criticizing that or document review or things, what on those resumes is just people never have decided what they want to do. You could go to, again, some of the best and the wealthiest and the most well-known attorneys in the country graduated barely, were the bottom of their class at law schools all over the country, but law schools that you've never heard of, but they knew what they wanted to do. They said, I want to be a personal injury attorney, I want to be a criminal attorney, I want to be this, I want to be that, whatever it is. And they did it. I know lots of famous attorneys that went to law schools that you probably never even heard of, but they knew what they wanted to do and they did it. And so you need to know what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong. And I just want to be I talk with a lot of passion about this because it's so important. But if you don't know what you want to do, you're just going to fall into whatever's available. And the only thing that's available is, if you don't know what you want to do, is document review and all these other things, or who knows, but just commit to something. I don't care what it is. It could be anything, but you have to commit to some practice area. And you don't need to go to a top law school to be a successful attorney. You don't need to do well in law school to be a successful attorney. You don't need to work in a law firm. You can start your own practice, but you do need to know what you want to do. And I know people that, one of my friends, a couple of people that I talk to in an email daily are on the news all the time and stuff. And there's nothing, one of them, incredible background, but these people do not have these pedigrees or anything. It's not a big deal. So they're committed. They know what they want to do, and they've chosen a practice area and they committed. And that's really important. If a law firm doesn't know what to do, they're just going to stick you. They're going to say, okay, this person's an attorney, let's pay him whatever and have him look at documents or something. So law firms want you to be committed. It doesn't matter. I've seen people, if you're committed, you can do anything. And I guess that's my point. I don't want to go too far into it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so there's a chat going on here in the questions. So if you're a bar admitted already in multiple states, should you not put that in your resume? This is a good question. No, you should put the resume, your bar admissions in other states in your resume. But the point is, so an example would be, and I see this all the time, someone's in New York and they graduated in 2020 or 2018. And then they're like, oh, I was admitted in California in 2020. If you're a New York law firm and you're seeing someone admitted in California in 2020 or 2021, and they're applying to work with you, it's pretty obvious that the person is going to at some point move to California and try to work there. And this is what everyone like that does. Or if so you want to make sure that you don't give people the wrong impression. Now, an example would be, you might have worked in California for 10 years and then moved to Illinois or Florida or something. That's fine. And you might be in New York and also admitted in New Jersey. That's very common, and DC and all this stuff. And that doesn't mean anything. But if you put something on your resume, if you're admitted there in 2010, and you say I'm admitted to Florida in 2021 or Texas, then people are going to be like, this person's moving to Florida, this person's moving to Texas. And if you're applying to jobs there, that's a bad idea. So you don't want to show people that you're not likely to commit, that's all. Okay, that was a great question. Okay, let's see here. Is it possible to be overqualified when writing an attorney resume? Yeah, so again, it is possible to be overqualified. The issue is that when you're writing a resume, you want to look like you want to emphasize, the best way to emphasize your experience with a reader is typically just to talk about what you've done. So or what titles you had. So if you were the director of employment law for a major corporation, you did that for 10 years, that's all they need to know. They don't need to know that you wrote handbooks and you helped defend against lawsuits and you wrote compliance and you dealt with outside they don't need to know all that. They know that. So at most titles, like if you say I was an associate at Winston and Strawn in Chicago from 2015 to 2021 in the litigation department, that's all they need to know. They know what that means. Everyone does. All you're doing is just showing thought about problems in this practice area and worked in this practice area. You don't need to tell people everything you did. That it's interesting. Like it was funny, and there's a school of thought, and I think a lot of people, especially younger people, may get it from their parents, or they may get it, I don't know where it comes from, but I used to have people come to me all the time and be like, you gave me experience doing this. Now I'm entitled to this much money. And I'm like, what? It's like, I give you this experience, or I started out here working on this and you gave me this job and I did a good job at it. Therefore, because I'm doing two things, I'm entitled to more money. This is, and I don't know where that comes from. It may be, I don't know if it's a generational thing or blue collar, white collar, I don't know, but just because you get more experience doing something does not necessarily make you more valuable. Just because you're a litigator and got experience writing trademarks doesn't mean you're a more valuable, probably means you're less valuable. So you don't need to put down everything you did. It doesn't make you when it comes right down to law firms and all employers, just want people to do the job, follow orders, be manageable, improve, and that's it. It's not if you give somebody some experience doing something, they're suddenly entitled to more money or they're more valuable in the market. It's not. An attorney is essentially hired to think about problems and solve them and that's it. So there's nothing you can say on your resume where you're talking about all your experience that's going to change that. That's how I would put that. And so a lot of times when you're putting more stuff in there, it's just annoying people. Okay, if you do not put jobs, what about gaps? Yeah, a lot of times there's resume gaps on people's resumes, and sometimes they're very long-term gaps. Gaps are not a good thing. People are expected to start practicing law and never stop. And a lot of times people have all sorts of resume gaps. The problem with starting law and practicing law and stopping, and I don't want to get too far into this, but you lose your contacts, you lose your expertise, you lose expertise. All these things happen when you stop practicing law, lose focus, and walk away from matters, and all these bad things happen when you stop practicing law. And so there's always been in the legal market, and it's been around forever, even before, is that people are expected to never stop practicing law. Now, again, it's different now and it's changed, but what I would recommend is if you do have gaps in your resume, which is okay, you just put them down and that's it. And then you can explain them. So people go and have children, they do other things and so forth, but no one's going to be impressed if you said, I wanted to go write a book or I wanted to take a sabbatical. They don't like that. If you do have gaps on there, then just leave them there. I've had funny experiences before. This is a funny experience, but years ago, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I decided to open an office in Las Vegas, and I thought it was booming and all these things were going on. And so got into Las Vegas and I started interviewing people, and I kept getting these resumes with all these gaps. But I would interview the people, and then I started figuring out that these people had actually been in prison during these gap times. And these were like people to be my assistant and things like that. They weren't necessarily legal jobs, but it was funny. I was like, wow. And again, that's not what they're going to connote here, but you need to be very careful about gaps. And there is this expectation that once you start practicing law, you should never stop. And then again, you should be in the same practice area and all that too as well. Let me see. Okay, so let's see here. So this person says, if you have contract work, is it better to list Robert have contract for 7 years and list jobs under one heading? I don't. If you were a contractor for 7 years for Robert Half, I don't know the best way to write that, but I would just say discovery specialist, and then you could say work for several law firms on behalf of, or something like that, as a discovery specialist for these years, or as a e-discovery specialist or whatever. You can say it that way. The problem with anytime you write like that you're a contractor. And again, lots of people are contractors. There's nothing wrong with being a contractor, and I'm not judging it. But if you're trying to get a job as a full-time attorney in a law firm, you have to look at it from the law firm's point of view. But they want someone with a short-term mentality that may not have been trained in their practice area, or do they want someone who's going to commit and stay there long term? And so that's the reason you have to be very careful about contract jobs, because you need to be able to communicate something different than what a contract work does. And then the only other problem with contract work is that a lot of times doesn't require the same level of detail and thought in terms of this is what you might do. If you're reviewing documents, that's different than writing a brief or arguing in court. These are just different skills. You need to be very careful about how you're framing that. And it's a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely a challenge. Okay, let's see. Wow. Okay, so this is a great question. How do you address being laid off? I recall in 2009, law firm descriptions literally said, do not apply if you've been laid off. Wow. Okay, so the layoff, there's a bunch of problems with that. And I agree. I don't know how that works either. And so there's a couple schools of thought with a layoff. And so I think this is a very good question. So how do you address being laid off? So being laid off, there's a couple of different ways to think about that. So the first thing is, if you're laid off, it does not mean you're unemployable. But what it does mean is that it means that you were not considered the most valuable or connected at your firm. And that doesn't really mean anything. So I'll tell you a couple stories. So one story is, I was talking to this attorney years ago. I don't know if it was around this time. And I think she'd been at Jones Day, and then she went to work at a huge firm in New York City that was hiring all these people from big firms to work on a giant case. And so they hired 15 people to help them. And then the case settled. And after a couple of years, and they'd each worked like 3,000 hours a year and just like crazy. And the firm just laid them all off and the case settled. And these are obviously very talented people coming from a top firm, and they were all laid off, which is unfortunate. So does it mean they were bad attorneys? No, but it also means that you're not always considered the most valuable or connected at the firm. And the idea is that, but the other problem is when people are laid off, they have sour grapes. They have sour grapes at their next firm, and then they often quit or problems and so forth at the next firm, or always covering their back, and I don't know. But it's just, I think that tends to be a lot of it. I had an experience, and this is just as an aside. Early in my career, when I used to talk to attorneys all the time, I'd always talk to attorneys and they'd be laid off, and I'd be like, oh, it's horrible, or fired. And I would bring them in to my company, and the fired ones I would hire. And then within a year or two, they'd always fire me and then start competing firms and badmouth me. And so a lot of times when people are laid off and fired, they actually can be very problematical at their next firms. And so I've noticed that with a lot of people. And I think it's just because it's a horrible experience getting laid off or fired. And so you're angry, and the angry happens to your next firms. But this stuff do not apply if you've been laid off. So basically what they're saying that they want people, and I talked a little bit about this later, you have gaps, you lose your contacts, expertise, focus. But the other thing is, I think when you're laid off, you're often angry and always trying to protect your back at the next firm. And I don't know, but even if there were industry-wide layoffs and it wasn't your fault. And the idea is that the people with the most hours, that have the most friends and stuff, aren't laid off. And so law firms want to hire people that are going to be able to be connected and do the best work and are more valuable than whatever. And the law firm is going to invest in keeping them around no matter what happens. So what do you do if you're laid off? It's different being laid off in different cities. So the problem with a city like New York City or these sorts of places with or even San Francisco and a lot of big markets, there are tons of people that the law firms can hire that aren't laid off, and that they don't have to worry about, or not laid off, and they don't have to worry about things like gaps and are they going to quit? Are they angry? Were they not considered and they don't have to worry about all the issues. So do not have to worry about issues. So that's the big issue there. Worry about issues. So what do you do? Like, how do you counteract that? The smartest possible thing you can do is to move to a smaller market where they don't have as many people to choose from with your type of qualifications. Or you can try to stick around in your market and compete for smaller firms and so forth. But the smartest thing you can do is move to a smaller market that have a lot of people to choose from your qualifications. So I've worked with laid off candidates. I've had ones that have been laid off in San Francisco, New York, and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's, if you want to stick around and play this game in New York or San Francisco or whatever big market you're in, you're just going to be competing with everyone that's employed. And because work's slowing down everywhere, they're all going to be applying for the same jobs. The law firms are going to hire the people that are employed versus the ones that aren't, because they have to worry about it. So what do? The smartest thing you can possibly do is to look at smaller markets. And these people are amazed. They're like, I don't know, I got 4 job offers. I can't decide which one to take. Maybe I should just stay in San Francisco and I'll get something. I'm like, no, you're getting hired in a small firm in Kentucky and Lexington or whatever, or a mid-sized firm. No firm in San Francisco is going to work. So you need to, if you're laid off, you just need to compete in the market that you're in if you're in a smaller market, but not compete in the market you're in, but look at a smaller market instead of competing in the market you're in, or look at a smaller firm. Again, I talked about earlier, you have these different size firms. You have your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 firms. And if you're laid off from a 5 firm, your smartest thing would be to try to go to a 4 firm. And if you're laid off from a 4 firm, you might try to go to a 3 or a 2 firm. That's all. Or you could do the same thing with markets. Your 5 is going to be your huge markets. Your 4s are your smaller markets. And so you just move to another market and you'll have no problem. The problem that a lot of people have, and I'm talking about this in a lot of detail now, because I do think that there's a recession coming on and it's going to be bad. There's all the stock market and everything that's happening. There's no way that this is we're not in trouble. But the idea is that the mistake that people make, especially junior attorneys, is they're laid off and they think, oh, I'm a failure because I was laid off in one of the biggest firms in the country, and what am I going to do? And they move home, or so. It's just dumb stuff like that, or they give up on the practice of law no, you go to a smaller market or a smaller firm and you stick with it. This is what you do. You don't worry about trying to compete in a market where you're going to have a hard time. So if you get laid off at a big firm in New York City as a corporate attorney, then fine. Then you try to get another job in another big firm, but you also try to get a job maybe where you're from. Maybe you're from, I don't know, Tallahassee or something, and you try to get a job in Tallahassee, and then other markets, smaller markets in Florida. Maybe you look at other smaller markets and you'll get a job and you'll keep practicing law, and then you move back when things are better in the economy. Happens all the time. But a lot of times people are mistaken, thinking, I'm laid off in this huge market, I'm not getting offers, there must be something wrong with me, I have to quit the practice of law. No, you're just competing in a market where there's an incredible number of people with your same qualifications, if not better, they're employed. So why wouldn't the law firms look at them first? They're looking at people that are less risk. And if a big law firm has the option, they're going to look at the people with the less risk. That's all. So these are just things that you really need to think about, and it's very important. I like these questions. They're very good questions. Thank you for everyone who's asking them. All right, it's a good idea to have different targeted resumes for different positions. If I did different things, it's international arbitration. This looks very consistent on my profile. So your LinkedIn profile, people will look at, but you need to make your LinkedIn profile. And again, I probably should look at my LinkedIn profile, but I'm so busy doing this kind of stuff. But the point is, yeah, you need to make your LinkedIn profile consistent. And sometimes you just put the name of the employer. That's it. You don't have to talk about all these different things. If you talk more about that, then people are law firms have no reason to hire. Why would they hire someone that's doing 5 or 6 different things when they can hire someone that does one thing? Think about it. Law firms want to hire people that do one thing, not 5 different things. So your LinkedIn profile needs to be consistent. Now, you don't need to talk about all the different things you do on your LinkedIn profile. You just list your employers with your resume. And then if your resume, yes, you should have different resumes for different positions, or your resume should, it's not that you're lying, but your resume should emphasize different things for different positions. Different things for different positions. Okay, so that was a great question. Let me see here. It says cultural change is used in, let's see here again, D terms, and most non-people of color do not understand terms. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we did talk about cultural change. I did understand that in terms of what that was, what the person was talking about, but I don't really, this person, I think we were talking about that was, I don't know, but yeah, that's fine. But as a corporate attorney, I don't know that's necessarily, let's see here. I'm just looking at this next question. That was a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Use the resume to be considered. AI. Okay, what advice and tips can you provide to help explain a major career change at age 50 on an attorney resume and cover letter? Okay, so I'm not sure what that means by a major career change at the age of 50. I think what that may mean is doing something different than practicing law. Again, law firms will hire people that you just put yourself in the shoes of an employer. If you've chosen to do something different and they have an applicant that's chosen to do something different and then an applicant that's still practicing law, who would you choose? So you just need to be very careful about that. If you did do a major career change or something different at the age of 50 and want to come back, that's perfectly fine. But you have to, again, realize that the employers that are going to be interested in you may not be as prestigious as the ones you're coming from or you were at before. And in order to interest people in you, you have to somehow be able to provide a benefit. One of the things I like about people that are in very focused practice areas is if, for example, if you were a employee benefits attorney and from the age of 25 to 50, and then you decided you wanted to go open a store selling canoes, and you did that between the age of 50 and 55, and then you wanted to go back to being an ERISA attorney, because you did that for 25 years, people would probably be very interested in you. You would still get a job, as crazy as it sounds, because you'd shown you commit to something for 50 years or 25 years, and there weren't a lot of people. So my advice would be to emphasize any commitment to one practice area would be the thing I would do, and someone will hire you. Be the most important thing. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, so someone says, I'm returning to work after a 7-year absence. Again, if you're doing something like that, there's nothing wrong. And law firms are actually because they want to they're actually very understanding if people have left for 7 years to do something like raise children and they actually, I think in a lot of respects, you almost have a better chance many times and I don't say this in a condescending way, but law firms love it when attorneys get mortgages. They love it when they have kids. They love it and the reason they like it is because all of a sudden you have to work. And so anything that shows you have to work, which would be kids, paying for college, all that sort of things, actually are very good things for law firms. And they like that because it gives them control and it makes you more likely to stay because you're more senior, and it's harder for you to leave and get another job. So there's a lot of things they like about this. It's not to say. And so I think that could be very helpful. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let me see. So I'm just looking at these questions. Okay, let me see here. Listen, great. Another question. So long one. I'll write it down because the person there all the time. Is it ever possible to get a legal job if you started in law 4 years and then owned your own business in non-legal field 15 years? Now you want to go back to law. Okay, so it seems like it would be extraordinarily helpful for companies. So it's different getting an in-house job as opposed to getting a law firm job. So I do, with someone that's just interested in the business sector, I'm just somewhat discouraged. I wish I was in a top law school and working at a top law firm. Okay, so no, you're not doing, so there's a couple different schools of thought here. And I just want to, this person got laid off during the recession. And so no, you can, so if you owned your own business in the non-legal field for 15 years, and then for 4 years, and you want to go back, you could actually get a job working for a company. So companies love people, especially a company in the industry that you were in as a general counsel or something, would be very interesting. So I don't know what the industry is, but say it was clothing or entertainment or I don't know, or restaurants or something. I had an experience once where I used to have this business, and I think the website's still active, but it's not. But it was called Legal Authority, and what it would do essentially is, say you were looking for a job, you would come to this company, and we'd say, "Would you want to work in house?" And the person would say yes, and say, "Okay, there's 6,000 companies, and within 10 miles of your house in Burbank, California, that have more than $10 million in revenue. Would you like to apply to them?" And the person would say yes. We would print the resume, and people would get tons of jobs. They get like 20, 30 jobs sometimes with companies. They get calls from restaurants and be like, "Wow, I thought when I opened my third location, I didn't realize that suddenly a great attorney like you would be interested in me." So there are so many in-house position people out there that would be interested in you. There's so many law firms that are smaller that might be interested in you. Now, I say smaller, I'm just in-house, and all sorts of different things are definitely possible, and especially with that type of background. But law firms have to they have a kind of a pecking order, and they need to make sure that they bring in people that are going to work hard and be able to do that, are going to commit and haven't been their own boss and all these sorts of things. And if you don't have that, they're just going to hire someone that wasn't, unless you can position yourself in a certain way. With your own business, though, I think you would have a lot of luck getting an in-house job. I also think you would have a lot of luck starting your own practice, representing people in that business, because you understand the kind of problems. So that's really all there is to it. But no, you cannot leave a huge law firm, and even if you got laid off, and do something for 15 years and expect to go back. You can work your way back, but you can't go back. No, sometimes they will take you back. I've seen some incredible stories, but I've seen big firms, people leave to go have kids, and then they come back 20 years later, and the law firm welcomes back as a third-year associate. And so it's very interesting. There are a lot of firms that do that. Okay. Okay, so this is an interesting question. I'll just answer this one real quick. I'm a lot of great work. I'm a doctor of law from Paris. I'm focused on privacy data protection on online platforms. I've been doing research and would like to find a position, but I don't have any in-house or law firm experience. Okay, the first thing is so there's a lot of firms, U.S. firms that have international practices, and they have international practices and have programs for international attorneys. So it's White and Case, there's a bunch of them. And so you potentially could get a position with one of them. You're going to need the New York bar, you're going to need the New York bar, then you're also going to need to get sponsorship. How do you do that? There's a lot of different ways. It's not easy to do that. So if you're from Paris and that's where your law degree's from, you probably, in order to take the bar, I'm not sure, but I think you do need to get an L. Maybe not in New York, but your law firm's not going to hire you unless you get an LM. So I might investigate trying to do that at Yale or another school. But you also, once you do that, that'll give you a lot of options. Also with companies don't look at law firms a lot of times. It won't look at you as a discriminating of a way as a law firm, because law firms have certain things that they need so working for a French company in the US, working for a law firm in the US with offices in Paris, or trying to find a law firm in Paris that's a US law firm that may offer you the opportunity to work in the US in the long run. It would be how I would approach that. Okay, let me see here. This is a fun thing. I took off part of my career, we drove 5 years due to a long distance personal relationship. I think, if you took 5 years off and you want to get back into a law firm, my idea would be, the thing is about when you're applying to law firms is there's large law firms or small law firms, and small law firms, if you're working in LA, that's a huge market. So you're going to have a very difficult time getting a position at a major firm, but smaller law firms that may not pay as much are probably a good idea. So the idea would be there's personal injury firms that may start out, and this is in LA, literally at $60,000 a year. You could start out at one of those firms and move to a larger one, or if you have special type of corporate experience and so forth, you could maybe get a job in a smaller firm. So you have to work at a place that's not getting a lot of applicants, and those are typically going to be smaller firms. And you say, what if you did take 5 years off for a long distance personal relationship? That does sound like you were more interested in doing something else, which is okay. But there are people that would never consider doing something like that because they're so serious about their career. So my only advice to you would be to find a job. It's probably going to be in a smaller employer. and then move to a larger one. The other thing that's nice too is that there's all sorts of options that attorneys have. It's not, law firms are not the only place you can work. You could work in the government and all these different things. I think hopefully that's a good. Okay, someone said I sent out a bad resume. How long do I have until sending out a new resume? It depends on and this is I think the final question. It depends on it depends on the resume that you sent out. So if you did send out a bad resume, then it depends on whether or not the place you sent it to has a S system. So if they have an applicant tracking system, then they probably have your original resume. You can certainly ask them to update your resume, and they will probably just update and delete the old one. I don't think they care too much. They're not going to look at your new resume. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being on this webinar today. I really do appreciate all the questions. I know it was a long webinar. A lot of people did send their resume in. Unfortunately, I've been talking for 4 hours and there are 3.5 hours, whatever it is. And I would like to review more resumes, but what I will do is I will try to schedule, let me see, one person did raise his hand. And actually the person that raised his hand, I did see your resume. So let me just review it for you real quickly. I'm going to take off your information. Oh, a couple more people. But Michael raised his hand. So I'm going to look at your resume real quickly, if you don't mind, for you, just before I get off, because I know you put it in the paste. And then I'll just do that. Because I know you took the time to ask this question. So I want to make sure I get it for you. Hope that helps. Okay, let me just see here. Putting this in the chat. Sorry. Okay, I think I got it all. Okay, so that's it. So this particular resume this is how it starts. 17 years. Wow, that's a good resume. I like it. Let me see here. It's a good resume. Okay, so let me make sure I have it all here. I don't see the law school. Oh, here we go. Keeps going. Oh, wow. Another big firm. Okay. So I'm going to keep reading this. Okay, so let's get to this resume. So this is this person, Michael. Oh, Michael. No, we don't have Michael. 17 years experience working on 30,000 plus trade. Wow. All right. I don't like these introductions, but which I've talked about several times, but I think this is actually a very good introduction. I like it just because if someone sees this, they're like, wow, this person knows exactly what they're doing. It's a very good it's a very good resume for a trademark attorney. Very good. Now, this particular information it comes at the top. Let me just say solo practice. Okay. So this trademark copyright solo practice, and then nothing, and then this 14 years from the USTPO. Great. And then this position. Yeah, this is a very good resume. It's an exceptional resume. I think what I like about it is I think it shows a commitment to one practice area. It shows this. You worked as a law clerk, looks like hopefully during law school, but for 4 years. So you've always done the same thing. It's just an exceptional resume. There's nothing, let me just see here. Yeah, and the foreign languages are kind of fun. I like this a lot. I don't know that this needs to go in there, like this particular stuff down here. I wouldn't let me actually undo that just to help you. I would remove that. I would remove this. I don't think anyone needs to know that you took classes in Hebrew. That's great. But yeah, now you already put this, I think you put the bronze medal awards and stuff from these on here. I would put these in your experience under the USTPO as opposed to there. And I think, yeah, I would say this would be probably enough, just this top thing here. Again, I've been counseling people for my entire career to remove this, but I do this introduction because it's just awesome, because it's just 30,000 trademark applications. This is a very good resume because it's so strong. I would almost recommend this part here. You could put in maybe, yeah, I don't even know that you need this, but you have tens of thousands litigated. This is great. Now, I don't know why there's a comma there, but maybe that's ours. But yeah, this is a very good. And then I don't know, this is 1 year. Okay, that's all right. Yeah, and I would just say trademark attorney. There, attorney. So this is a very strong resume. It's not what's nice about it is it does everything that we talked about so far. So it has a consistency in the practice area. It's very strong. You're doing one thing. It's just excellent. And the only question this person may be having is if they've been trying to apply for jobs, being in the market you're in makes it more difficult because there's not as much soft IP done in that market. And there's also the USPTO with a lot of people. I wouldn't say anything about retirement. Yeah, this is an exceptional resume. The only thing that I would recommend is and one thing I would just say from an employment perspective, being located in Stafford, Virginia, and then let me see, take that off there and just say, this is fine. And then just say what kind of work you're doing and that sort of thing. Kind of work, but just a little bit of information there. Yeah, this is great. There's nothing really wrong with this. Now, I wanted to say a couple of different things about this particular resume, just because if someone's watching this and they're a trademark attorney, sometimes if you're having issues getting a position, this particular person, if I was you, by the way, I would just start my own, with this own law firm, I would get a freaking awesome website and just start marketing the heck out of it. And I don't know how you would do that, but you would probably get a lot of business, but you could also get a lot of jobs working for law firms remotely if you don't want to leave because your family's in that area or whatever. But this is a very strong resume because you've always done the same thing. And you went to a top law school. That's great. It's a very good resume. So I can't really think of anything negative to say about this resume other than, we'll just see here. Yeah, nothing. So it's a good resume. But in terms of what does a person like this do to get a job, it's often very difficult when you're coming out of the government after a long career to get a position in a law firm, because at this point in your career, they would want you to have business and stuff. But that's not to say you couldn't start your own very profitable trademark firm or find a small IP firm to work for in DC, or even a large IP firm, or work remotely for firms all over the country. There's lots of people that are interested in you, and it's a very good resume. And what's nice about it is just the consistency of this particular resume is very good. Now, working for the government is different, of course, than working in a private law firm. The personalities are different. The pressures are different. The authority you have working for the government is different than what it's like working for a private law firm. But if it was me, I would just because there's a lot of people in the situation. If you start your own firm, it could do very well. If you market it properly, you would have to learn how to do that properly. And if you want to work remotely, to work anywhere in the country, you could. You need to apply. You could. Or remotely. And the only other thing I would say, just in terms of trademark law, this is just a statement about trademark law, is trademark law does much better in good economies and bad because new businesses are being started and so forth. And so it's typically much more popular, and there's a lot of demand in good economies, and then in bad economies that demand dries up. And then only one other point about trademark law is a lot of it is, and this is just for the benefit of people on this call that may not know about it, but prosecuting and paying to have a trademark done is different than actually getting a trademark. So a lot of it sometimes is piecemeal, meaning someone may pay $1,000 to have a trademark done or filed, and then that's it. So a lot of times law firms don't necessarily like the work because it doesn't generate as many fees. That's not to say it's not a good practice area for them, but this person could do very well, probably working anywhere in the country. So it's a good resume. And I'll just bring up a couple other points. China, Asia, and things, they do have a need for people with your background as well. And you could probably get a better job. Let me see. Okay, let me just see those questions. So it's a question about working in Venezuela. Okay, I hope that helps. Does anyone have any other questions or things I can answer real quickly before I end this? Because that last question, I was saying real briefly that or I was saying before that if you did send your resumes, I think I put it, it's Francis M. I'll put it again in the chat for you guys at BCG search. I think I did put that in the chat, but let me also put it in the questions and answers for you. I'll put it here. Whoops, I don't know. Let me just find something. Yeah, I'll put it right here. This is the email right here. So if you send your resume to Francis, what I will try to do is if you were on this call and you did send the resume during the call and I didn't answer your questions, I apologize. I didn't review your resume. I apologize. And what I will do though is I will figure out how to review those for you. And I'll try to schedule another webinar, maybe not during our regular time, because I think I'm doing the state of the market next week. And then after that, I think I'm doing the cover letter reviews. But if you do send your resume to him, Francis, then I will make sure that I don't miss it. And because I know this can be helpful, and hopefully I helped you guys improve your resumes today and give you some tips. And I also want to make sure I will send out to everyone that registered for the webinar. I don't know if it was sent to you yet, but I will make sure that the notes that I took for everyone during the webinar today are sent out. Let me see if I can even send them in chat. Yeah, I think what I have to do, and I actually can do it. Let me just make sure I do it while we're on the call. And let me see if I even got it back. That if it was formatted and stuff it's sent back, give me 1 second and I'll make sure I send it to you right now. Second. Oof, 1 second here. Sorry. It doesn't look like it was sent. Okay, so let me send it to, I'm going to put it in Dropbox real quick and send it to everyone we're on the call just so you have it. And then I don't think it's in the correct format, but at least you'll have it before this ends. Okay, so here's this. And then here's also, this is the resume review. And I'll leave this open for the next couple of minutes. And then for that. But yeah, thanks everyone again for all these questions. I think it was a very helpful webinar and I appreciate everyone being here. And then what I will do is if your resume didn't get reviewed today, I'll make sure that it's reviewed for you, that I try to schedule something maybe even this week, like on Friday or something where we can go over it and just make sure you email it to Francis if you didn't get it. And I'll strip off all the identifying information because you can see we didn't cover that today. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you got the link in the chat and thanks again. Bye.